Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Wide Awake Horror today. Just want to say, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join the family. And as always, if you like these stories, you know what to do. Smash that like button and let us know in the comments what you think. And as always, enjoy the stories.
You know how people talk about Tinder dates, right? How it's all exciting and new, full of possibilities. Well, that's what I thought too when I matched with Andrew on Tinder. He seemed pretty normal, good looking, a little on the quiet side, but overall he wasn't weird or anything. We'd exchanged a few texts, talked about the usual stuff: work, hobbies, favorite music. Nothing super deep, but enough to keep things interesting. I was getting excited for the first time meeting him in person. You kind of get those little butterflies, the ones that make you hope that this could be something good. So, after chatting for about a week, we decided to meet up at a cafe downtown. I'm not a big fan of fancy places or going somewhere too expensive, so this little spot was perfect for a casual first date. We agreed on 7 o'clock p.m., and I was there a little early because I'm one of those people who always likes to be on time. I walked into the cafe and found a table by the window. The place wasn't packed, but it had a nice vibe, kind of cozy. The kind of spot where you can hear your thoughts, but there's still enough noise to make you feel like you're in the middle of something happening. Anyway, I sat there, scrolling through my phone for a bit, trying not to look too nervous. And then I see him walking through the door. I recognize him instantly, Andrew. He's wearing a casual jacket and jeans, looking pretty much like his photos. I stand up to wave, but what happens next totally throws me off. Instead of coming over to greet me, he just kind of nods in my direction and walks past me to the table. And behind him, there's a woman who's walking just a little too close to him for comfort. It wasn't like they were just walking together. It was more like they were already in sync, like they had been doing this routine for years. I'm trying to make sense of it, but I'm also thinking, maybe they're just friends. Maybe she's a friend, and he's just being polite. Yeah, that seemed like a good explanation at the time. But no, as soon as they sit down, I start to get this weird feeling in my stomach. She's way too comfortable, and I'm way too confused. She pulls out a chair and sits down at the table like it's nothing. And I'm standing there trying to process the situation because this woman didn't ask if she could join us. She just did it. No hesitation. No polite, is this okay? It was like she was already part of the date. Andrew looks at me, smiles, and says, "Hey, sorry about this, but this is my ex, Rachel. She's just here for a quick chat." I'm sitting there, blinking like, wait, what? But he doesn't even give me a second to respond. He keeps talking, and I'm in shock. Rachel and I are still really good friends. We're totally cool, and she's just here to catch up. Don't worry about it. He says this like it's no big deal. And I'm trying to process this like, should I say something? Should I just go? But no, I don't want to be rude. So I sit down, hoping this whole thing is just an awkward misunderstanding that's going to get better. But it doesn't. It gets worse. We start ordering, and Rachel's talking to Andrew about some vacation they took together last year, just casually talking about it like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, Andrew's ignoring me more and more. He's smiling at Rachel, laughing at her jokes, looking so comfortable with her like they've known each other forever. It's becoming more obvious by the minute that I'm not the focus of this date. She is. I'm just here, sitting at this table, practically invisible, and I'm getting more and more uncomfortable. I try to join the conversation, asking about their trip or something to break the silence. I don't even know why I did it. It was like I was trying to force myself into a space that didn't belong to me. But when I asked, Rachel just glanced at me, then back at Andrew and kept talking to him like I wasn't even there. And Andrew? He barely acknowledged me. He didn't look at me, didn't respond with much enthusiasm, just a quick, "Yeah, it was fun," before turning back to Rachel. I'm telling you, it felt like I was on the outside of a very private moment between the two of them. It's like they were playing a game, and I was the pawn who didn't know the rules. Every time I tried to talk, it was like my words didn't matter. It was all about them. And I'm sitting there feeling more like I was in some weird experiment than on a date. And then it happens. Rachel suddenly leans over and says, "You're so lucky. Andrew's a really great guy. I mean, I know I wasn't good enough for him, but he's a catch. He'll find someone who appreciates him." I'm sitting there stunned. Is this really happening right now? I feel like I've entered the twilight zone. Rachel is talking about how Andrew's a catch, as if I'm just supposed to agree with her. As if I'm supposed to hear all about how she wasn't good enough for him and then be fine with it. I was so uncomfortable, I almost choked on my water. I didn't know how to respond. And Andrew? He doesn't even flinch. He just smiles at her, agreeing with everything she says. That's when I realized I wasn't here on a date. I was here because I was a placeholder. I was the person you wanted to spend time with. I was just the person who was filling a spot for when Rachel wasn't around. And honestly, it was pretty clear that Rachel didn't want me here. She kept making little comments like, "Oh, I bet you guys would look cute together. But don't worry, Andrew's kind of picky about who he dates." I tried to stay calm, but inside I was furious. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to do it without causing a scene. So I stayed, faking a smile and trying not to let on how uncomfortable I was. The whole time, I kept thinking, this can't be real. This can't actually be happening. After what felt like forever, I finally decided I had enough. I didn't even finish my meal. I just stood up and said, "I think I'm going to head out. It's been interesting." Andrew looked at me with this confused expression, like he didn't even know why I was leaving. "Wait, don't go. Come on, let's finish dinner. I really want to get to know you more," he said. I couldn't even respond. I just grabbed my purse, muttered something about needing to go home, and walked out of the cafe. It felt like freedom, but at the same time, it felt like I was leaving with a piece of myself still trapped in that awkward situation. I ended up blocking Andrew on Tinder that night, and I didn't look back. I don't even know why I stayed for as long as I did. Maybe I thought something would change. Maybe I thought he'd suddenly realize how messed up it was to have his ex tagging along like that. But no. So yeah, Tinder might seem like a great way to meet someone new, but sometimes you meet people who are just playing games. People who don't care about you, who are just trying to get something from you. And that night, it was a reminder that not everyone has good intentions when they go on these dates. When I matched with Emily on Tinder, I thought it was just another one of those casual, see what happens things. We started chatting, and everything seemed pretty normal. She had a nice smile, seemed down to earth, and we had some pretty good conversations. The usual small talk turned into deeper chats about life, hobbies, and even a few funny moments. It felt like a connection, the type of person you think you could click with. We agreed to meet up after a week of texting. I suggested a nice coffee shop near the park, one with outdoor seating and a chill vibe. It wasn't too fancy, but the kind of place that made for a good first date, relaxed, casual. She agreed, and we set the time. I showed up a little early, grabbed the table near the window, and spent some time checking my phone to make sure everything was good. Then Emily walked in. She looked exactly like her pictures, tall, dark hair, and a smile that made her look approachable and friendly. I stood up to greet her, and she immediately hugged me. It was a warm hug, not too stiff, not too awkward. We grabbed our drinks, sat down, and started chatting. I was feeling pretty good about how things were going. The vibe was light and easy. At first, everything was great. We talked about our favorite books, shows, music, typical first date stuff. But there was one thing that kept happening that started to nag at me. Every few minutes, Emily would glance at her phone. At first, it wasn't that noticeable, but then it started happening more often. She'd check it, type a few things, and then go right back to talking. I'm not someone who gets easily bothered by stuff like that, but after a while, it felt kind of off. I tried to ignore it. Maybe she had something important going on, right? But then it happened again, and this time she didn't even try to hide it. She straight up checked her phone in the middle of a conversation. It was as if whatever was on her screen mattered more than whatever I had to say. I couldn't just let it slide anymore. "Hey, is everything all right?" I asked, trying to sound casual but clearly concerned. She looked up at me, a little surprised, and then smiled. "Oh, yeah, sorry. Just work stuff. You know how it is," she said, brushing it off. I nodded, though I didn't fully buy it. I couldn't help but wonder why she was constantly distracted. We continued talking, and for a while, things seemed fine again. But the next time she checked her phone, I saw the name pop up on her screen. David Love. I couldn't ignore it now. "Who's David?" I asked, trying to sound casual but failing to keep the curiosity out of my voice. Emily paused. For a second, she just stared at the phone. Then, without missing a beat, she said, "Oh, that's just my husband." I froze. Husband. She got husband. What was she doing on Tinder then? My mind started racing with questions. I didn't want to come off as rude or accusatory. Still, I couldn't help myself. "Wait, what do you mean your husband?" Yeah, I'm married, she said with a half smile. But don't worry, we have an arrangement. I was completely thrown off. An arrangement? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She nodded, sipping her coffee. Yeah, we've been together for years, but we're kind of in an open relationship. It's not a big deal. We're both on the same page about it. I like to have a little fun on the side. I didn't know what to say. I was honestly speechless. Part of me thought I misheard her, but the more I processed it, the more it made sense. She'd been texting him the entire time we were sitting there. That's why she was so distracted. I'd been sitting here, thinking we were having a normal date, while she was using it as some sort of side project. So wait, I said, trying to piece this all together. You're married, but you're on Tinder. What's the deal with that? Emily didn't seem uncomfortable, like I thought she might. She just shrugged and leaned back in her chair. It's just for fun. I don't take it seriously. It's not like I'm looking for anything long term. But hey, if something serious happens, it happens. I just like the variety, you know? I sat there, processing all of this. I was starting to feel like I had stumbled into some weird experiment. She was married, using Tinder for fun, and I was just a pawn in her little side hustle. I honestly didn't know what to do. I wanted to leave, to get up and walk away, but I was also trying to wrap my head around what was happening. I didn't want to judge her, but this felt wrong on so many levels. This wasn't what I signed up for. Tinder was supposed to be a place to meet people, maybe start something genuine. But here I was sitting across from someone who was clearly just using it as a way to cheat and play games. I tried to get my thoughts together. So, you're just looking for something casual then, with no strings attached? She nodded. Exactly. My husband knows about it, and he's fine with it. He does his thing too. It's just how we like it. Don't take it personally, okay? I couldn't believe it. She was sitting there, talking to me like it was all no big deal. Like I was just another random guy she was meeting up with while her husband was at home, completely unaware of the whole thing. I felt like I was being used, and I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. So you're not looking for anything real? I asked, trying to clarify. Not right now, no, she said, looking almost bored. I mean, I'm having fun meeting new people, but I'm not expecting anything permanent. And honestly, I think it's better this way. No expectations, no drama. I could feel the frustration building up inside me. I wanted to just get up and leave, but I tried to hold it together. I wanted to know how far this was going to go, and why she thought this was okay. So, why are you even here with me then? I asked, finally getting the courage to ask what had been on my mind. If you're already in a relationship, why are you looking for someone else? She gave me a smile that felt a little too rehearsed. Like I said, it's just fun. Why not? You're not my husband, and I'm not his girlfriend. I'm just here for something casual. I looked down at my coffee, not sure what to say. This was all too weird. Everything I thought I knew about dating felt completely wrong. I'd come into this expecting something simple, something honest, but instead I was sitting here, talking to a married woman who saw this whole thing as a game. I wasn't even a real person to her. I was just part of her fun. I felt like I'd had enough. I stood up, trying to keep my cool. I don't think this is going to work, I said. I don't want to be part of whatever this is. Emily didn't seem surprised. She didn't try to stop me. She just nodded like she understood. No worries, she said. It's not for everyone. Thanks for meeting up, though. Maybe we can do this again sometime if you change your mind. I didn't respond. I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the cafe, my head spinning. As I stepped outside into the cool air, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I felt like I'd been used, not just as a date, but as a pawn in someone's twisted version of an open relationship. I never heard from her again, and honestly, I wasn't upset about it. It was a messed up situation, and I was glad to be out of it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Tinder and dating in general wasn't as innocent as I had thought. People had their own hidden agendas, and sometimes you were just a part of it. When I first matched with Mark on Tinder, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was charming, well-spoken, and had that smile that just kind of made you feel like everything was going to be all right. His profile was full of all the right things. He loved hiking, family time, and was into the same music I liked. I figured, why not? A little conversation wouldn't hurt. We started texting, and pretty quickly, things started to feel pretty natural. We joked about life, shared stories, and I felt like we clicked. After a week of back and forth, we decided to meet up. He suggested grabbing a drink at a place downtown, nothing too fancy, just a chill spot with some outdoor seating. I was excited, not nervous, which is always a good sign, right? I showed up first, again, early as usual, and sat down at a table outside. It wasn't too hot or too cold, the kind of perfect evening you wish could just last forever. I had a good feeling about this date, you know. It was casual, yet something about it felt like it could lead somewhere. I hadn't felt this way in a while, so maybe that's why I was extra hopeful. Then Mark walked in. He had that I just got off work, but I still look good vibe going on. He was wearing a button-down shirt that fit him perfectly, and those dark jeans that were just the right amount of casual. He smiled when he saw me, and I could tell he was happy to meet up too. We got our drinks, and it was all normal at first. We talked about work, life, what we were up to that week, the usual stuff. He was funny, easy to talk to, and there were no awkward silences. It felt like this could actually go somewhere. The first hour passed by with no issues. But then the conversation took a turn. I guess it was when we started talking about family. We both mentioned how important family was to us, but when I brought up my parents, his face changed just slightly. I don't know if anyone else would noticed, but I could see that little shift. He seemed to get quieter, like there was something on his mind. "So, how's your family?" I asked, trying to keep it light. "Well, I have a pretty perfect family, actually," he said, and he said it with his proud smile. "Everything's, well, it's going according to plan." "According to plan?" I asked, curious. "Yeah," he nodded. "You see, I've been working on a system. It's like a life blueprint. You know, you get to a point where you know what you want, and you make sure everything fits together." I was intrigued, but also a little confused. "What do you mean, a blueprint?" He leaned in slightly, and for the first time, there was this weird intensity in his voice. "Well, I have a plan for my life. I know exactly who I want to be with, what kind of family I want to have, and what I need to do to get there. Everything needs to fit perfectly, like a puzzle." I laughed a little, thinking he was just joking. That's ambitious. He didn't laugh back. Instead, he got more serious. "I've been working on it for years. I know exactly who I need. My partner has to meet certain standards. They have to fit the profile. The right personality, the right background, and most importantly, the right genetics." I blinked. "Genetics?" "Yeah," he said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I've been doing research. You'd be surprised how much genetics play into building the perfect family. I mean, I'm not just looking for someone to marry. I'm looking for someone to have kids with, kids who are going to grow up and achieve things. And the key to that is finding the right partner." I could feel my heart race a little. This was the conversation I expected. I wasn't sure if he was joking, being sarcastic, or if he was genuinely serious. But his face didn't look like he was kidding. "So, what does the perfect partner look like for you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well," he said, taking a sip of his drink and looking me over, "it's someone who has the right physical traits, obviously, but also someone who has the right mindset. A partner who's strong, motivated, and driven. Someone who knows what they want out of life. I've got a whole spreadsheet of what I need." "Wait," I said, laughing nervously. "You have a spreadsheet?" He didn't smile, just nodded. "Yep, I've done the math. I've broken it down by personality traits, educational background, even career goals. I have a list of everything I need in a partner to create the perfect family. It's not personal, it's just the logic." I didn't know what to say. It was like I was talking to a robot or some kind of sociopath. "So, you're telling me that you're looking for someone based on a list of genetic traits and personal attributes?" He looked at me dead serious. "Yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want someone I'm attracted to, someone who's good looking. But that's only part of it. The bigger picture is about creating a legacy. You need to breathe the right qualities into your children. It's about ensuring the next generation is successful." I was frozen for a second, trying to process everything he just said. This wasn't what I signed up for. I thought we were here to get to know each other, to see if we clicked. But this was some weird genetic experiment he was talking about. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "I'm serious," he said, not even flinching. "You wouldn't believe how much research I've done. I've been looking into family histories, health backgrounds, and genetics for years. I know exactly what I need. It's like breeding the perfect racehorse. It's all about ensuring the right traits get passed down." The more he spoke, the more disgusted I felt. This wasn't just about dating anymore, it was about some twisted idea of creating the perfect family based on traits and genetics, like he was shopping for the ideal person to mate with. I pushed my chair back a little, trying to give myself some space. I didn't know this was where this was going, I said, my mind reeling. I thought we were just having a normal date. He didn't seem to get what was wrong with this. It is normal. This is how it should be. Don't you want to have a successful family? A family that has the right genes, the right background, the right foundation for success. It's all about survival of the fittest. At this point, I didn't know what to say anymore. This guy was genuinely trying to convince me that I should be his perfect match, based on a list of qualities he had compiled. He didn't see me as a person. I was just a potential candidate to help him build the right family. I looked at him for a long time, trying to figure out how I could even respond. I'm not interested in being part of some project. I'm just here to meet someone and see if we have a connection. But this is too much. He blinked, and for a second, it looked like he didn't understand. But we're just getting started. You could be perfect for me. I shook my head. No, I'm not interested in that kind of plan. I'm not someone's experiment. I'm not your checklist. He seemed disappointed, but didn't argue. Well, I think you're making a mistake, he said. But that's okay. I guess I'll just have to find someone else who gets it. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and left. I didn't look back. That night, he sent me a message thanking me for my time and saying that he understood why I couldn't see things his way. But the whole thing just felt off. I blocked him on Tinder, and honestly, I was relieved. It was like a nightmare I didn't even realize I was in. I'm still shook by that date. I went in thinking it was going to be just a normal meetup, but instead it was like I was a pawn in someone's weird, twisted plan to create the perfect family. I've had my share of weird dates, but nothing like this. It's a reminder that not everyone on Tinder is looking for love, and some people are just looking for something else entirely.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now back to the stories.
I'll admit it. I was excited when I matched with Chris on Tinder. He had that confident vibe in his profile, and his pictures showed him hiking and doing all this outdoorsy stuff. It seemed like we had a lot in common. He was attractive, funny, and we had a pretty great conversation from the start. It felt like it could turn into something. We decided to meet up for a walk in the park. Nothing fancy, just a simple and chill date. I'm not the kind of person who needs anything extravagant on a first date. So I showed up at the park and grabbed a bench near the lake, trying not to look too awkward while I waited. About 15 minutes later, I saw Chris approaching. He was exactly how he looked in his photos, tall, athletic, with that rugged outdoorsy look. I smiled when I saw him, and he waved back at me as he walked over. So far, so good. We said our hellos, exchanged some pleasantries, and started walking around the park. The conversation was smooth at first, but then it took a weird turn. We started talking about work, and I asked him what he did for a living. He paused for a moment before giving me this really vague answer, something about consulting and business management. Normally, I just move on, but there was something off about the way he said it. He didn't seem comfortable talking about it, almost like he was trying to downplay it or keep it mysterious. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe he didn't want to get into details, but then he hit me with a question that immediately made my stomach drop. So, what do you do for work? And how much do you make? He asked, completely out of nowhere. I was taken aback. It wasn't like I didn't want to talk about my job, but the way he phrased it was just strange. I work in marketing, I said, trying to keep it casual, and I make enough to get by, I guess. He nodded, then asked, do you think it's important to be financially successful in a relationship? I didn't expect the conversation to go in this direction at all, but I went with it. I mean, yeah, I think it's important to be financially stable, but it's not the only thing that matters, you know. He looked at me with this strange, almost calculating expression, like he was sizing me up. Right. But do you think you could be in a relationship with someone who doesn't make a lot of money? Now, I was really starting to feel uncomfortable. This was a date, not an interview. I mean, it would depend on a lot of things. Money isn't everything, but it helps. I'd never date someone who didn't try to improve themselves. Chris smiled like he'd been waiting for me to say that. Exactly. You're definitely on the right track. You see, I'm very careful about who I date. I don't have time to waste on people who can't bring something to the table. I need someone who matches my lifestyle, someone who can contribute, someone who understands what real value is. I didn't quite understand where he was going with this, but I was starting to feel weirded out. He was talking about value like I was some kind of commodity. The whole conversation was starting to feel less like a date and more like some sort of test. So, you're saying that you wouldn't date someone who doesn't make a certain amount of money? I asked, now genuinely curious to see where he was going with this. Chris didn't skip a beat. Exactly. If someone doesn't have the financial stability I'm looking for, it's just not going to work. It's not about being shallow. It's about finding someone who has ambition and drive. If you can't support yourself or work towards something bigger, then what are we even doing? I honestly didn't know what to say to that. It was like I was talking to someone who had a checklist of qualities that had nothing to do with personality or connection. It was just about how much someone could offer materially. But I wasn't going to just let it slide. I wanted to push back a little. But isn't love and compatibility more important than money? I mean, you can't put a price on that, right? Chris just looked at me, a little smirk on his face. I mean, sure, love is great, but love doesn't pay the bills, does it? And compatibility is only useful if the person has something to bring to the table. You can't just rely on feelings. It hit me right then. Chris wasn't looking for a relationship. He was looking for an investment. He wasn't looking for someone to love. He was looking for someone who could be of value to his life. It felt like I was just an accessory in his well-planned future. So, how much money does someone need to make in order for you to date them? I asked, more to challenge his viewpoint than anything else. He thought about it for a second, then answered, I think anyone I date needs to be making at least 6 figures. Anything less, and it's just not worth my time. I need someone who's going to be on the same level as me financially, mentally, and emotionally. I could feel the tension building. This was the kind of conversation you have with someone who treats relationships like business transactions, not genuine connections. I took a deep breath, deciding to just be honest with him. Well, that's not really what I'm looking for. I don't need a partner to make 6 figures. I'd rather be with someone who values hard work, ambition, and who isn't obsessed with money. Chris raised an eyebrow. So you're saying you could date someone who doesn't have those things? Someone who isn't financially stable? That's a big risk. How could you rely on someone like that? I felt like I was getting pulled deeper into a conversation I didn't want to be a part of. This was a total deal breaker for me, but I wasn't going to give in. Look, I'm not saying money doesn't matter, but I'm not going to judge someone based on their paycheck. Relationships are about understanding each other, supporting each other, and building something together. Not just about what someone can bring to the table financially. There was a moment of silence, and I could tell Chris didn't agree with me. He was thinking it over, probably wondering how I could possibly have such a backward view of relationships. Finally, he spoke again, but this time his tone was a little more defensive. I get that you want something deeper, but you also have to be practical. I've worked too hard to get where I am to settle for someone who can't contribute. I have my standards, and I don't apologize for them. At this point, I could tell that we were on 2 completely different wavelengths. I was looking for connection, understanding, and love, while he was treating everything like a business deal. I had had enough. I think I'm going to head out, I said, standing up from the bench. I don't think we're looking for the same thing. Chris looked at me like I was the one making a mistake. If you change your mind, let me know. I'm just being realistic about what I want in a partner. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked away. My stomach was in knots. I got into this date expecting to meet someone I could talk to, someone I could connect with. But instead, I'd encountered someone who saw relationships as nothing more than transactions. It was a wake-up call. Dating shouldn't be about how much someone makes or whether they fit into some financial mold. It should be about who they are, how they treat you, and how you connect on a deeper level. Chris wasn't someone I could see myself with, not even close. And that realization made walking away a lot easier than I thought. I don't know what I was expecting when I matched with Jack on Tinder. Maybe a fun conversation, or at least a date that didn't feel like a complete waste of time. His profile seemed pretty normal. He liked the outdoors, had some funny pictures, and his bio was simple but cute. Nothing too fancy. I wasn't looking for anything too serious, just something casual. But this wasn't what I thought I signed up for. So we decided to meet up for a hike. I figured, hey, it'll be a great way to get to know someone without the whole awkward dinner thing. Plus, I like being active, and hiking sounded like a fun, laid-back way to spend the day. Jack seemed excited, and so was I. When we met up, he was exactly how he looked in his photos. Tall, athletic, and definitely in shape. He had this calm, cool vibe that made him seem easygoing. We hit it off immediately, chatting about our favorite trails, outdoor experiences, and other things we had in common. The first part of the hike was easygoing, just two people enjoying the fresh air and getting to know each other. But then things started to get weird. After about an hour, Jack suggested we take a less traveled path, one that would lead us deeper into the woods. He promised the view at the end was worth it. I agreed, thinking it would be nice to see something more secluded. He led the way, and at first, everything felt totally fine. The more we walked, though, the more I started to feel this subtle tension in the air. It wasn't something I could put my finger on, but there was a definite shift in his behavior. We reached a clearing, and Jack stopped in his tracks. I paused behind him, looking around at the beautiful scenery. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, but still, it felt nice to be away from the usual crowds. So, Jack said, turning to me with a serious look on his face, "How do you feel about trust?" Trust, I repeated, a little confused by the sudden shift in the conversation. He nodded, and then he said something that threw me completely off guard. "I think it's important to test trust early on, you know." I chuckled nervously, thinking he was joking. "What do you mean? Like a trust fall or something?" Jack didn't laugh. "No, something more challenging." My stomach dropped a little. Challenging. What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something out of his backpack, a blindfold. I stared at it, feeling a cold knot tighten in my chest. "I thought we could try something, to see if you trust me," he said, his voice steady, almost too calm. "I want to see if you can follow me blindfolded, if you trust me enough, that is." I stared at him, unsure if I was hearing him right. "What?" I asked, a little too sharply. "You want me to walk through the woods blindfolded?" "Yeah," he said, still calm. "It's about trust. I want to see if you can put your faith in me. If you can't, then maybe we're not on the same page." I couldn't believe this was happening. This wasn't a fun challenge or a game. This felt like manipulation, like he was testing me in some twisted way. "I don't know, Jack. This doesn't feel right." He looked at me with this odd expression, almost like he was disappointed. "Come on, it's just a little trust test. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like I'm going to hurt you." The hairs in the back of my neck stood up. There was something about the way he said it that didn't sit well with me. It wasn't playful, and it wasn't innocent. It felt controlling. "I'm not comfortable with this," I said, shaking my head. "I don't know you well enough to do something like this." Jack's face hardened. "Why are you being difficult?" "I just thought it'd be fun, a way to get to know each other better. Don't you trust me?" I could see the frustration creeping into his voice, and that's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't about trust at all. This was about control. He was trying to push me into doing something I didn't want to do, and when I hesitated, he was trying to manipulate me into giving in. "I think I'm going to head back," I said, my voice firm. I turned around, ready to leave. But Jack stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "You can't just leave like that. You're not going to back out now, are you?" My heart raced, and for a moment I felt trapped. He was bigger than me, and the isolation of being deep in the woods made it harder to think clearly. But then I reminded myself, this was my choice. I didn't owe him anything. "I am leaving," I said, my voice shaking a little but with a sense of finality. "This isn't fun anymore. I'm done." Jack looked at me for a moment, and for a second, I thought he might argue or get angry. But instead, his expression softened, like he was trying to act understanding. Okay, he said, stepping aside to let me pass. "But you'll be missing out, A lot of people would do anything for a chance to prove their trust." I didn't answer him. I just walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. It was the most unnerving experience I'd had in a long time, and the more I thought about it, the more it made me feel sick to my stomach. I had been on enough dates to know when something was off, but this was next level. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to manipulate me, testing my boundaries to see how far he could push me. I kept walking until I could see the park entrance in the distance. The entire time, I didn't look back. I wasn't sure what his deal was, but I wasn't going to find out the hard way. The last thing I needed was to get caught up in some psychological game where he held all the power. When I finally made it to the entrance, I looked at my phone. I had a text from Jack already. "I'm sorry if I pushed you too hard. I just wanted to see how much you trusted me. I guess you don't trust me at all, but if you change your mind, let me know." I didn't even respond. I just blocked him on Tinder and went home. The whole experience left me shaken. It wasn't just the fact that he wanted me to blindly follow him through the woods. It was the fact that he thought it was okay to make me do something uncomfortable to prove my trust. I'm no expert, but I know enough to understand that manipulation like that doesn't belong in any relationship, especially not a first date. So yeah, if you ever get into a situation like that, where someone tries to push you into doing something you're not comfortable with, just trust your instincts and walk away. No date, no person is worth risking your safety or peace of mind for. You ever meet someone on a dating app and get the feeling that they're too good to be true? Like they just seem perfect on paper, but something about them feels off. That's how I felt when I matched with Sophie on Tinder. She had a killer profile, beautiful pictures, an easygoing vibe, and tons of interests that seemed to align perfectly with mine. Hiking. Check. Trying new foods. Check. A sense of humor that matched mine. Big check. It all seemed perfect, so naturally we started chatting. We texted for a few days, and everything felt great. We talked about our favorite books, movies, and even a bit about our past relationships. Honestly, I was starting to think this might turn into something. She was easy to talk to, and we shared a ton of laughs. Eventually, after a week or so, we decided to meet up for dinner. We picked a trendy little spot downtown that had a cool vibe. I showed up first. I hate being late. And a few minutes later, Sophie walked in. She looked just like her pictures, maybe even better in person. She had this effortless style, wearing a simple yet fashionable dress that made her look put together without trying too hard. I couldn't help but notice she seemed a little nervous. It was like she was excited, but also had something else on her mind. When she saw me, she immediately smiled, and we greeted each other with a hug. It wasn't awkward, but there was this small, unspoken tension in the air. We sat down, ordered drinks, and started chatting like we'd done 100 times before. At first, it was exactly what I had hoped for. Good conversation, lots of laughs, and the easy back and forth that made the date feel natural. But then, as the night went on, I noticed something strange. Sophie kept looking at me with this intense focus, like she was studying me. I'm not talking about a casual glance here or there. I'm talking about her eyes scanning me, almost like she was trying to figure me out. It felt uncomfortable, like I was the subject of some experiment rather than a date. I tried to brush it off at first, but then when I made a joke about something trivial, she didn't laugh the way I expected. She gave me this small smile, but then, almost immediately, she pulled out her phone. I figured maybe she was texting someone, but no, she opened up an app, and I could see that she was typing something down. I didn't know why it bothered me, but it did. "So, what are you writing?" I asked, trying to make light of it. Sophie looked up, almost startled, and quickly put her phone down. "Oh, nothing. Just a few notes. You know, personal stuff." "Personal stuff? About what?" She gave a quick laugh, like she was brushing it off. "Just things I've been thinking about. Don't worry about it." I didn't want to push, but it definitely felt like she was hiding something. We got back to talking, and I tried to keep the conversation light. But the whole time, there was this nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Sophie was too perfect, too interested in me, and yet there was this strange distance between us. It wasn't until she asked me the next question that I realized what was happening. "So, tell me about your childhood. What was your family life like?" she asked, her voice casual, but her eyes never leaving mine. I was a little thrown off. It was fine. Nothing special, really. Why?" She smiled, but it didn't feel like a smile of genuine curiosity. It felt more calculated, like she was trying to dig deeper than she had any right to. "Oh, I just like to know where people are coming from. It helps me understand them better. The more you know about someone's past, the better you can understand who they are now." That struck me as odd. Most people don't ask about your childhood on a first date, especially not in such a probing way. It felt invasive and, honestly, a little too personal for a casual dinner. But I answered her, not wanting to come off as defensive. But as the night wore on, it became clear that this wasn't just about curiosity. Sophie wasn't looking to get to know me for the sake of building a connection. She was collecting data. She was cataloging everything I said, analyzing my words, my mannerisms, and even how I responded to simple questions. When we were getting ready to leave, Sophie looked down her phone again. I didn't say anything this time, but I noticed her screen was filled with a list of notes. She quickly shut the phone, but not before I saw the heading at the top of the page, Subject Profile. I felt the air shift. Subject Profile. I repeated, a little unsure if I heard that right. Sophie looked at me, her expression blank for a second before she quickly put on a smile. Oh, it's nothing. Just a personal project I've been working on. I keep track of people I meet and the kind of dynamics we have. You'd be surprised what you learn from analyzing behavior. It's just for my own study, though. I didn't know what to say. Was she serious? Was she really taking notes on me, on us, like I was some kind of case study? My mind raced trying to piece together what was happening. It wasn't until we were walking out of the restaurant that it all clicked into place. Sophie wasn't interested in me as a person. She wasn't even interested in getting to know me for the sake of a relationship. She was collecting data for some kind of experiment. She was writing everything down, cataloging every response, every gesture, and every reaction I had, all for her own personal project. I was just another subject to her, and the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I tried to push it down, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. As we walked toward the parking lot, Sophie casually said, "You know, I've been working on a book. It's all about my dating experiences and the profiles I've collected. You're actually going to be in it, if that's okay." At this point, I was starting to get angry. "What? You're writing a book about dating, and I'm just going to be another chapter?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Sophie's expression didn't change. "Well, not just another chapter. I think you're an interesting case. You're very predictable, but also a little more complicated than I first thought. It'll be good material." I felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath me. This wasn't a date. This wasn't even an opportunity for me to meet someone. I wasn't a person to her. I was just data for her to analyze and use however she saw fit. I stopped walking, turning to face her. "I think I'm going to call it a night," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sophie didn't argue. She just nodded, almost like she expected me to say that. "I understand," she said, "but if you ever want to contribute more to the project, just let me know." I didn't say anything else. I turned around and walked straight to my car, my mind racing. I'd been manipulated, used as material for her so-called study, and I didn't even realize it until it was too late. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been just another part of Sophie's strange experiment. I didn't know what her ultimate goal was, or what she planned to do with all the information she'd collected, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never go on another date with someone who treated me like a subject for their personal research. If anything, it was a reminder that you should always trust your instincts. If something feels off, if the person you're talking to seems more interested in you as a case than as a human being, it's time to walk away. And don't let anyone make you feel like you're just another data point. I've been on a few Tinder dates before, and while they weren't always the best, they were usually at least normal. You know, some small talk, a little awkwardness, maybe some genuine connection if you were lucky. So when I matched with Daniel, I wasn't expecting anything wild. He seemed nice enough in his profile, good looking into similar things, and his messages were polite, but not overly cheesy. He even talked about how much he valued deep conversations and emotional connection, which, honestly, seemed pretty refreshing after a few dates where the guys just wanted to talk about themselves. After texting for about a week, we decided to meet up at a local diner. Nothing fancy, just a simple, low-pressure date. I showed up first and grabbed a booth near the window, trying to not look too out of place or obvious. A couple of minutes later, Daniel walked in, and I immediately saw that he looked pretty much like his photos, tall in shape, and had that kind of warm, approachable vibe. We exchanged a smile and a hug, and things were off to a decent start. We ordered our food, and at first the conversation was light. We talked about our jobs, hobbies, movies we liked, nothing too heavy. But after a little while, Daniel shifted the conversation in a way that made me feel a little uneasy. "So, what's your biggest flaw?" he asked, looking at me with this intense gaze. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him right. My biggest flaw? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty hard on myself sometimes. He nodded slowly like he was processing my answer. Yeah, I can tell. You definitely have a bit of that people pleaser thing going on. You're always trying to make everyone happy, but you can't do that if you don't prioritize yourself first. It's a common thing I see. I didn't know how to respond to that. It wasn't like I was offended, but it also felt kind of invasive. He was acting like he had some kind of emotional insight into my life already, which felt a little weird considering we only just met. I mean, I guess I just want to be liked. I said, trying to keep it light. But who doesn't, right? Right, he said, nodding again. But the thing is, you have to learn to stop caring about other people's opinions. That's one of the reasons why people get stuck in life. They don't realize that their happiness is dependent on themselves, not on everyone else's approval. At this point, I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable. I didn't mind talking about deep stuff, but it felt like he was going a little too far, too fast. He wasn't asking me casual questions anymore. It was like he was analyzing me, picking apart my personality like it was some kind of case study. So, how's your family? He asked, suddenly, without missing a beat. Tell me about your parents. Do you think they shaped who you are today? I stared at him for a second. I guess so. They were always really supportive, especially my mom. But I think everyone's family has an impact on who they become. Daniel leaned back, studying me. I can tell your mom is a big influence. You're definitely someone who seeks validation from others, especially people you care about. It's not a bad thing, but it's something you should work on. I almost dropped my fork. I wasn't used to someone being this blunt with me, especially not on a first date. Okay, well, I guess we all have stuff to work on, I said, trying to lighten the mood. But Daniel didn't laugh. He just stared at me, his gaze more intense now. No, but seriously, it's something you need to address. You've probably been doing it your whole life, but you're not going to find peace unless you stop looking for validation in other people. You can't keep seeking approval. You need to look inward and fix yourself. It was at that moment I realized something. He wasn't just asking questions, he was critiquing me. Critiquing my personality, my family dynamic, my self-worth. Everything he said felt like he was breaking me down and telling me what was wrong with me. And I was starting to get really uncomfortable. I tried to steer the conversation away. So, what about you? Do you have a big family? I asked, hoping to change the subject. Daniel didn't hesitate. Yeah, but I don't really get along with my dad. He's one of those guys who's always about achievement and success. Everything was about pushing me to be perfect, to be better than everyone else. That's part of the reason I'm so focused on self-improvement. I don't want to be like him. I'm better than that. I wasn't sure what to say to that. He had just admitted that his dad was kind of emotionally distant, and it was clear that it had affected him, but he seemed almost proud of it. It was like he was wearing his self-improvement as a badge of honor, but it came across as more of an obsession. He didn't seem interested in self-growth for himself. It was all about proving something, and that was a red flag. At this point, I started thinking maybe I had made a mistake agreeing to this date. What was supposed to be a fun evening was quickly turning into an emotional interrogation. I felt like I was sitting across from a therapist, except without the professionalism. Every time I said something, he would analyze it and tell me how I could be better or stronger. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, I appreciate your insights, but I don't think I need someone to tell me what I need to fix about myself. Daniel's expression didn't change. I'm not trying to tell you what to fix, but if you want to be happy, you need to recognize where you're holding yourself back. You're stuck in patterns that you don't even realize. It's not your fault, but it's something you need to be aware of if you ever want to move forward. It hit me. He wasn't trying to get to know me. He wasn't interested in a relationship. He was just trying to fix me like I was some project. And that's when I realized I wasn't the one he was dating. I was the subject of his emotional critique, his experiment in human behavior. I stood up, my chair scraping across the floor. I think I'm going to head out, I said, my voice firm now. Thanks for dinner, but this isn't really what I was expecting. Daniel didn't look surprised. He just nodded. I get it. Most people don't like hearing the truth, but you'll thank me later. I didn't respond. I grabbed my coat and walked out, my head spinning. I didn't know if I was angry, frustrated, or just relieved that it was over. I'd never met anyone like Daniel before. He wasn't just analyzing me to get to know me better. He was trying to change me, and that wasn't something I was willing to tolerate. Later that night, he sent me a text apologizing for being too intense. He said that he just saw potential in me and wanted to help me become my best self. But I didn't respond. I blocked him on Tinder and deleted his number. I wasn't interested in being someone's emotional project. And honestly, I think it's better to trust your gut. If someone's trying to change you or fix you on a date, it's time to walk away. You're not a fixer-upper, and neither is anyone else. I thought I was meeting Isabella for a fun, laid-back evening. Just a casual date with someone who seemed sweet and normal. We had been texting for a few days, and she was friendly, easy to talk to, and even had a sense of humor that I liked. There was something about her profile that felt approachable. She seemed like the type of person who was down to earth, not playing games or pretending to be something they weren't. We agreed to meet up at a local bar for drinks. Nothing fancy, just a chill vibe. The kind of spot where you can actually hear each other talk without shouting over loud music. When I arrived, Isabella was already there, sitting at the bar with a drink in hand. She looked great, wearing a simple yet elegant dress, her hair styled perfectly. As I walked up, she smiled and waved me over. We exchanged a hug, and I couldn't help but think this was going well so far. We got our drinks, chatted about the usual stuff, life, work, hobbies, and things were going smoothly. But then, a little while into the conversation, I noticed something odd. Isabella wasn't just asking about my life. She was studying me, really paying attention to how I responded to every single question she asked. It wasn't just small talk anymore. It felt like an interrogation, but in the gentlest way possible. "So, what's your biggest fear?" she asked casually, sipping her drink. I hesitated for a moment. It wasn't a question I expected to hear on a first date. "I guess failure," I said, shrugging a little. "Not reaching my potential, I guess." She nodded slowly, like she was analyzing my response. "Yeah, that's a common one. Fear of failure. People let it control them sometimes. Do you think it controls you?" I felt a little uncomfortable at this point. I don't know. I guess sometimes. But I try not to let it. Isabella didn't respond right away. She took another sip of her drink, her eyes still locked on mine. It wasn't the usual friendly gaze you get on a date. It was more like she was studying me, trying to figure out something deeper, something that wasn't there on the surface. "You're very guarded, aren't you?" she said, her tone almost too calm. "You don't really open up easily, do you?" I wasn't sure how to respond to that. It wasn't like I was trying to be secretive. I just wasn't used to someone analyzing me this much, especially not on a first date. I mean, I guess I'm just careful with who I trust, I said, trying to steer the conversation away from me. "Don't you think it's important to be cautious sometimes?" "Oh, definitely," she replied with a soft smile, but then her expression shifted slightly. "But that's also why you don't let people get close to you. You're scared of being hurt. You push people away before they can do that." I blinked, confused. Was she accusing me of something? "I wouldn't say I push people away," I replied, now more curious than defensive. "I just don't let my guard down right away. I don't think there's anything wrong with that." Isabella leaned in slightly, her tone being more intense. "No, but you do push people away. You make them feel like they're not important enough to get close to. You're afraid of getting hurt, so you build walls around yourself. You do it without even realizing it." I felt a little defensive now, but I tried to stay calm. "That's not true. I'm just being careful. There's a difference." She didn't seem to buy it. "But you don't trust people. You don't let anyone in. That's why you're still single. You're afraid of vulnerability. You don't know how to let go and actually connect with someone." The conversation felt like it was spiraling out of control, but Isabella didn't stop. This is part of the reason I like meeting people on Tinder. It's easy to see through the facades people put up. I'm really good at reading people, and I can tell you're hiding something. You're not as open as you think. I could feel the walls going up around me. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm just not going to pour my heart out to someone I barely know." Isabella gave a soft chuckle, but it didn't sound friendly at all. It felt like she was toying with me. "That's exactly what I mean. You think you can protect yourself by keeping people at arm's length, but all you're doing is isolating yourself. And deep down, you know it. That's why you're still on Tinder. You're looking for someone to fill the void, but you won't let them in." At this point, I felt like I was being dissected. I didn't know if she was just being observant, or if she was intentionally making me feel like crap. Either way, I wasn't comfortable anymore. Look, I said, trying to regain some control of the situation. I'm not interested in being analyzed, okay? Isabella just smiled, like she hadn't even heard me. You don't even realize how much you're sabotaging yourself, do you? You're so focused on protecting yourself that you're pushing away any chance of happiness. You're terrified of being vulnerable, and that's why you're stuck. I felt my blood start to boil. What kind of game was she playing? This wasn't a date. It was a psychological evaluation, and I wasn't having it. I stood up, feeling the anger rise in my chest. I think this is enough for tonight, I said, my voice firm. I'm done here. Isabella didn't try to stop me, but she gave me this look, like she knew something I didn't. You can run, but you can't hide from yourself, she said, her voice almost too calm. You're just scared, and that's why you'll always be alone. I didn't respond. I just grabbed my coat and walked out. As soon as I stepped outside into the cool night air, I could breathe again. I didn't realize how trapped I felt until I was free from her presence. She had turned what should have been a simple date into this twisted game of psychological manipulation. She wasn't interested in getting to know me. She was interested in making me feel inadequate, like I wasn't good enough the way I was. When I got home, I blocked her on Tinder. The last thing I needed was someone like her in my life. Someone who would try to make me feel like I was broken because I wasn't open enough for her liking. I'm all for being self-aware, but this wasn't about self-improvement. This was about control, and I wasn't about to let her have that over me. I learned something important that night. Not everyone you meet on a dating app has good intentions. Some people want to fix you, not love you. And if someone starts making you feel like your worth is tied to their standards, it's time to walk away. If you told me a week ago that my Tinder date would turn into a discussion about polyamory, I would have laughed it off. I mean, sure, I had heard of it and knew a few people who were into it, but it didn't seem like something that would come up on a first date. But here I was sitting across from Kevin at a bar, trying to figure out how I ended up in this situation. We had been chatting for a while, and honestly, everything seemed normal at first. He was charming, funny, and we both had a similar sense of humor. The more we texted, the more we seemed to hit it off. He had a ton of energy, and I could tell he was one of those people who just made everything feel light and easy. So when we agreed to meet up, I was genuinely excited to see if the in-person chemistry was as good as it seemed online. When I walked into the bar, Kevin was already sitting at a table near the back. He waved when he saw me, flashing a big smile that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. It was that kind of warmth that instantly put me at ease, and for a moment I thought this might actually go somewhere. We got drinks, started chatting, and everything was going well. He was just as engaging and friendly as he'd been in his texts, and we talked about work, music, travel, and our favorite movies. It was the typical first date stuff, and I wasn't complaining. But then, as the conversation flowed, Kevin hit me with something that completely threw me off. So, he said, casually taking a sip of his drink, how do you feel about polyamory? I stopped mid-sentence. Polyamory? Where the heck did that come from? I mean, I've heard of it, I said, trying to play it cool. But I've never really thought about it. Why do you ask? Kevin smiled like he was about to share some big secret. Well, I'm polyamorous, he said, looking me straight in the eye. And I want to know how open-minded you are about it. My stomach dropped a little. Wait, you're poly? I asked, feeling my voice falter a bit. You're in multiple relationships. He nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, it's the best way to approach love, if you ask me. I mean, the traditional relationship model just doesn't work for everyone, right? I think people are meant to love multiple people, and it's all about finding people who are on the same wavelength. I'm just not into limiting myself or someone else to just one person. I sat there, stunned for a second. This was not what I had signed up for when I agreed to meet him. I mean, I didn't expect to meet the love multiple people guy on a casual Tinder date. I didn't realize that was your thing, I said, trying to process what he was saying. Well, it's not something I tell everyone on the first date, Kevin replied, his tone light. But I've learned that being upfront about it is the best way to avoid wasting time. I want to be honest with people about who I am and what I'm looking for. If it's not your thing, that's totally cool. But if it is, then it's a great opportunity to connect with someone on a deeper level. I was starting to feel more than a little uncomfortable. So you're telling me that you're in relationships with more than one person at a time, and that's just normal for you? Kevin shrugged like it was no big deal. Yep, I've been in poly relationships for a while now. It's all about communication and honesty. I don't see the point in limiting yourself to one person when there are so many great people out there. I've got a primary partner, but I also have other people in my life who I care about deeply. It works for me. I was trying to process everything he was saying, but honestly, it was hard to wrap my head around. Okay, but don't you get jealous? Or don't they? Kevin laughed. You'd be surprised. People think that jealousy is an inevitable part of relationships, but it's not. It's all about setting boundaries and communicating openly. It's about trust, not insecurity. I didn't know how to respond. I had never considered dating someone who wasn't exclusively interested in being with just one person, and it felt like I was suddenly thrust into an entirely new world. Everything he was saying sounded foreign to me. I was starting to feel a little cornered, like I was being pushed to agree with something I didn't fully understand. I get that it works for you, but I'm not sure it's something I'm into, I said slowly. I've always been the kind of person who likes the idea of being with someone exclusively. I don't know if I could handle a whole, multiple partners thing. Kevin didn't seem offended, but he did lean forward, his voice a little more serious now. I get it, and I respect that. But think about it. The idea that we should only love one person is something that society imposes on us. It's not natural. Why limit yourself to just one person when there are so many amazing people in the world? You can love deeply and authentically without being confined by those boundaries. I could feel myself starting to shut down. The more he talked, the more I realized how incompatible our views were. I wasn't judging him for his choices. I just knew that it wasn't something I was interested in. I wasn't about to pretend I was open to something I wasn't comfortable with just to make him happy. You're right, I said, standing up. I think I'm just looking for something different. Something more traditional, I guess. Kevin didn't try to stop me. He just nodded like he understood. That's fair. I just wanted to be upfront with you. No hard feelings. I get that it's not for everyone. I felt a sense of relief as I grabbed my coat. Yeah, I appreciate you being honest. I just don't think this is going to work out. I totally get it, he said, standing up to shake my hand. Good luck with everything, and I hope you find what you're looking for. I walked out of that bar feeling both relieved and confused. I had just experienced a date that I never saw coming. A part of me felt bad for Kevin because I could tell he genuinely believed in polyamory, but I also knew that it wasn't something I could ever accept. It wasn't just the fact that he was poly, it was the way he tried to convince me that his way of life was the right way, the only way. When I got home, I thought about the date a lot. I wasn't angry with him. He had been upfront and respectful, but I was shaken by how differently we saw relationships. It made me realize that Tinder wasn't just about meeting people with similar interests. It was about navigating through people's different perspectives and realizing how incompatible some of those views could be. At the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to walk away. I didn't need to force myself into a relationship that didn't align with what I was looking for. It was just a reminder that honesty is key, and no matter how great someone seems on paper, if their values don't match yours, it's not going to work. That night, I deleted his number and unmatched with him on Tinder. As much as I respected his lifestyle, I wasn't ready to be a part of it. You know that feeling when you're out with someone and everything seems like it's going fine at first, but then suddenly they start talking about their ex in a way that makes you realize you're just a filler for the time being. Yeah, that's exactly what happened when I met Megan. We matched on Tinder after a few failed attempts with other people. I wasn't looking for anything too serious, just a fun night out with someone who seemed interesting. Megan's profile was simple, but she seemed cool, with a decent mix of pictures of herself at the beach, some hiking trips, and a couple of snaps with friends. We hit it off pretty well in the beginning, with casual banter and lighthearted jokes. It seemed like we shared similar interests, and the conversations flowed naturally. We decided to meet up for dinner at a low-key Italian restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, but enough to make the evening feel special. When I walked in, Megan was already sitting at a table, looking at the menu. She waved at me as I approached, and I couldn't help but notice how good she looked. Casual but stylish, with her hair down and a smile that looked welcoming and friendly. It felt like a promising start. We exchanged pleasantries and ordered drinks, and the conversation went from work stuff to music, travel, and favorite restaurants. It felt light and easy. So far, so good. The vibe was perfect for a first date, and everything seemed to be clicking. But then, things started to shift. About 20 minutes into the meal, Megan brought up her ex. I didn't think much of it at first. People talk about their exes, right? It's normal to mention them in passing. But the more she talked, the more I realized something wasn't quite right. So, yeah, she said, twirling her pasta. My ex used to love this place. We came here a lot. I glanced at her, unsure of what to say. Oh, yeah. How long ago was that? Not too long ago, she said, shrugging. About 6 months. He was kind of obsessed with the place. I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't like I wanted her to erase her past, but I wasn't exactly thrilled that she was still holding on to it so clearly. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't just hearing about her past casually. I was hearing about it like she was still trying to relive it. It didn't help that she was telling me about her ex likes and dislikes in detail, almost as if she were comparing him to me. I started feeling like I was just a substitute, someone to fill the gap. So, I said, trying to change the subject, what was your favorite part about the trip you went on last year? You said you love to travel. Her face lit up, but instead of answering my question, she went on to tell me more about her ex. Oh, we went to Italy once. It was his idea to go to this little town we visited. We spent the whole week there, and I don't know, it was just so romantic. I still think about it sometimes. Now, I was really starting to get the sense that I was just here to occupy the space that her ex had left behind. It was obvious she wasn't over him, and I was starting to feel like I was being used as a rebound. I could see the way her eyes softened when she talked about him, and how she kept bringing him up without realizing it. So, you guys were pretty serious, huh? I asked, trying to keep the tone light but definitely feeling a little uncomfortable. Yeah, she said, almost dreamily. We were. I guess you could say I'm still trying to get over him. It's just hard, you know? He's not around anymore, but some things are just hard to forget. I wasn't sure if I should have been offended or just sad for her. Was she seriously sitting there talking to me about her ex while we were on a date? Come on, this was a first date, and I'll be honest, I was trying to enjoy the evening, but it was clear that I wasn't her priority. Her ex was. By the time dessert came, I had started to feel like I was just sitting there while she had this mental reunion with a guy she clearly wasn't over. Every time I said something, she would give a polite response, but it was obvious she wasn't fully present. Her mind was somewhere else, back in the past. I decided to be direct. Megan, I have to ask, are you really over him? Or am I just here to help you get over it? She paused for a moment, looking at me like I'd just dropped a bombshell. What do you mean? She asked, looking confused. I'm over him, but it's just hard to move on sometimes. It's not like I'm still in love with him, but we shared so many memories together, and I guess some things are just not easy to let go. I stared at her, trying to figure out how to respond. This was the kind of date I'd signed up for. I wasn't interested in being someone's emotional crutch. I was looking for a genuine connection, not a place to park her unresolved feelings. But I didn't want to be rude either. Megan, I said, my voice firm now, I think you need to really think about whether you're ready for something new. Because right now I feel like I'm just a placeholder. You're still holding on to someone else, and I'm not interested in being used like that. Her face shifted, and I could see the realization hit her. Oh, I didn't mean for it to come across like that. I'm sorry if I made you feel like that. But I was already done. I couldn't stay in a situation where I wasn't being valued for who I was, where I was just being compared to someone who wasn't even there. It's fine, really, I said, grabbing my jacket. I think it's just better if we cut this short. I paid for my drink, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted to get out of there. It wasn't about the money or anything. It was just the fact that I wasn't going to sit there, pretending like this was still a date when she was clearly still emotionally attached to someone else. I wasn't her therapist, and I wasn't her rebound. As I walked out of the restaurant, I couldn't help but shake my head. I wasn't mad at Megan, not really. I just felt bad for her. She was obviously still stuck in the past, and she hadn't even realized how much she was letting it affect her present. But that wasn't my problem, and it wasn't something I could fix for her. That night, I blocked her on Tinder. She sent me a couple of messages apologizing and asking if we could still be friends, but I didn't respond. I knew I wasn't the one to help her move on from her ex. I wasn't interested in being a part of her emotional baggage. And if she couldn't let go of that relationship, and there was no way we were going to have anything meaningful. It was a good reminder for me, though, you can't force someone to move on. And when you're looking for something real, you have to recognize when you're just a stepping stone in someone's healing process. It's hard, but walking away from a situation like that is the only way to protect your own emotional well-being. I've been on my fair share of Tinder dates, and while I can't say they've all been winners, I can at least say I've learned a lot about people. But nothing could have prepared me for my date with Tom. We had been talking for a few days, and things seemed fine at first. We got along well over text. Good humor, mutual interests, the usual stuff. He didn't seem like one of those guys who just sends, "hey," and leaves you hanging. He actually asked questions, shared funny stories, and kept the conversation going. So when we finally agreed to meet, I thought it was just going to be a regular first date. Boy, was I wrong. We decided to meet at a casual little cafe downtown. Not a fancy place, but it had a nice vibe, and I figured it would be a great spot to have a relaxed conversation. I showed up a few minutes early, grabbed a seat by the window, and started browsing through my phone. After a few minutes, I saw Tom walk in. He was tall, dressed casually but stylishly, and had that air of confidence that some people just carry. I stood up to greet him, and he smiled, giving me a hug, which was a nice touch for a first meeting. We grabbed our drinks, sat down, and started talking. At first, everything seemed normal. The usual small talk, what we do for work, where we grew up, our favorite movies. But then, about halfway through our conversation, he hit me with something unexpected. "So, I've been doing a lot of thinking about dating lately," Tom said, leaning forward with a serious expression. "And I think I've figured out the perfect strategy." I raised an eyebrow, a little confused. "Strategy? For dating?" "Yeah," he said, nodding. "You know, the whole thing about meeting people, getting to know them, figuring out who's worth your time. I've been studying it, and I've come up with a method." I blinked. "A method?" "Exactly," he said, looking pleased with himself. "I've been on a lot of dates, and I've learned a few things. The key to success is having a strategy, being smart about who you date, how you date, and what you expect from it. I've got it all worked out." I was trying to follow along, but at this point I started feeling like I wasn't on a date anymore. This wasn't just two people getting to know each other. It felt like I was about to be pitched a product. "So, what's your strategy?" I asked, more out of curiosity than anything else. Tom leaned back in his chair, clearly excited to share his thoughts. "Well, first of all, you need to have clear goals. You can't just date for the sake of dating. You need to know exactly what you're looking for and why. Like, for me, I'm not just looking for a casual relationship. I'm looking for someone who's gonna be a long-term partner. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna settle for just anyone." "Okay, I get that," I said, nodding. "So you have high standards, right?" "Exactly," he said, clearly pleased that I was following him. "But it's not just about being picky, it's about being strategic. You need to assess every person you date like they're a business opportunity. You evaluate their personality, their background, their values, and most importantly, their potential for the future. It's like doing a risk analysis." I stared at him for a second, trying to process what he just said. "Wait, so you're saying you treat dating like a business?" He smiled like he had just explained the simplest thing in the world. "Yeah, exactly. Dating is just another investment, and you need to be smart about where you put your time and energy. You don't want to waste months with someone who doesn't have potential. You're trying to find someone who aligns with your goals and values." I didn't know what to say. This was not what I expected from a first date. This wasn't even a conversation anymore. It felt like I was being pitched on a business idea. And the more he talked, the more it became clear that Tom wasn't interested in connecting with me as a person. He was looking for someone who fit into his plan. It wasn't about chemistry or mutual interest. It was about whether or not I could meet the criteria. "So, what kind of criteria do you have?" I asked, half expecting the answer. "Honestly," he said, leaning in a little closer, "it's about financial stability, lifestyle compatibility, emotional intelligence, and long-term vision. I need someone who's driven, successful, and can keep up with me. I don't want to be with someone who's just going through the motions, you know. They need to have ambition, a career they're passionate about, and be willing to invest in the relationship." I felt my stomach tighten. I wasn't sure if I was angry or just frustrated, but I definitely wasn't feeling the connection I thought I felt earlier. "So you're saying you need someone who's what on your level?" "Exactly," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "It's not about finding someone just for the sake of dating. It's about finding the right person who complements your life. If they don't meet the criteria, they're just wasting your time. I didn't know how to respond. It felt like everything was so transactional. I wasn't looking for someone to complement my life in the way he was describing. I wanted a genuine connection, not some checklist of attributes that made someone worthy of my time. And the worst part, I realized I was being evaluated too. I wasn't here for a real date. I was a part of his system. I decided to call it out. So what you're saying is that you've created this whole dating system where you treat people like they're investments. Like you evaluate them based on your goals and whether or not they fit into your life. Tom didn't seem fazed. Exactly. That's the smart way to date. You don't want to waste your time on someone who doesn't meet your standards. Life's too short for that. I could feel myself getting frustrated. And what if someone doesn't fit into your plan right away? Do you just give up on them? Is it all about the checklist for you? Yeah, he said it, shrugging a little. If they're not right for me, then I move on. I don't have time to play games or wait around for things to maybe work out. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I've been doing this long enough to know what works. I had had enough. This wasn't what I signed up for. I wasn't looking for someone who treated dating like a job interview or a business deal. I wanted to meet someone who was interested in me for who I am, not for how well I fit into their strategic plan. I wasn't interested in being part of his dating project or a line item on his checklist. Well, Tom, I appreciate you being honest, I said, standing up. But I don't think we're on the same page. I'm not looking for a strategic partner. I want to meet someone who sees me as a person, not a project. His face froze for a second. He didn't look angry, but he definitely didn't seem surprised. I get it. Not everyone wants to play by the rules. But you'll see, being strategic is the best way to get results. I didn't even respond. I just grabbed my coat and walked out of the cafe. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath. The cool air helped clear my head, and I realized something important. Dating shouldn't be about strategies or systems. It should be about connection, trust, and understanding. If someone wasn't willing to meet you halfway and see you for who you are, then it wasn't worth it. And honestly, I was glad I walked away. That night, I blocked Tom on Tinder. I wasn't interested in being part of his calculated plan. I wasn't an investment or a project. I was a person, and I deserved to be treated as one. When Olivia messaged me on Tinder, I thought she was just another person looking for something casual, like most people I'd met before. Her profile was simple, a few pictures of her hiking and a couple of shots from a vacation. Nothing too crazy. Her bio said she was into self-improvement and loved exploring new places. I figured she was just like everyone else, looking for a good time and maybe a little adventure. We exchanged a few messages, and she seemed like a fun person. We bonded over our shared love for hiking and our mutual interest in travel. After a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up for a weekend hike. I liked the idea of spending some time outdoors, getting to know each other, and seeing if we clicked in person. It sounded like a low-pressure date, and I was all for it. The day of the hike, I showed up at the trailhead early, excited but a little nervous, like you always are before meeting someone new. Olivia arrived about 10 minutes later, and she looked exactly like her photos. She was dressed for the hike, with comfortable boots and a sporty jacket, ready to hit the trail. "Hey, glad you could make it," she said, giving me a big smile. I was instantly put at ease. She had an easygoing vibe, and we started walking right away, talking about our favorite trails and places we'd been. The conversation was going well, and I thought, okay, this could be a fun day. But after a while, I started to notice something. Olivia kept asking me about my childhood, my upbringing, and how I viewed relationships. It was all normal questions, I guess, but it felt like she was digging a little too deep for someone I had just met. I wasn't bothered by it at first. I thought maybe she was just genuinely curious. We were walking through some beautiful scenery, and I thought I'd just answer honestly and see where the conversation went. But then she hit me with a question that made me pause. "So, how do you feel about being vulnerable in relationships?" Olivia asked, glancing over at me with a serious expression. I was taken aback. "Vulnerable?" I repeated, unsure of where she was going with this. I mean, I think it's important to be open with your partner, but it's also about balance. You can't just pour your heart out to anyone. She nodded, as if she was waiting for me to say more. That's true. But don't you think vulnerability is the key to really connecting with someone? I mean, how can you truly have an emotional bond if you're holding back? I don't know, I said, trying to keep it casual. I think it's about trust. You can't be open with someone until you feel safe doing so. Right, she said, her voice getting quieter. But that's where the problem lies, isn't it? People don't want to open up because they're afraid of getting hurt, and that's where everything goes wrong. You can't have a real relationship if you're always holding back. I felt like something was off. Well, yeah, but it's not like I'm completely closed off. I think everyone has their own boundaries. Olivia gave me this little smile like she had just figured something out. Exactly. Boundaries. That's the problem, though. Most people's boundaries are just walls they build to protect themselves from getting hurt. But what they don't realize is that those walls keep them from really connecting with anyone. It's a defense mechanism, and it stops them from ever truly being loved. I started to get a weird feeling in my stomach. I don't know if I agree with that. Boundaries are healthy, right? They're there for a reason. You can't just open yourself up to everyone without some kind of protection. She looked at me with this intense gaze, like she was analyzing every word I said. That's exactly it. People think their boundaries are protecting them, but they're actually keeping them from experiencing real intimacy. I mean, think about it. How can you ever truly connect with someone if you're always holding a part of yourself back? I was starting to get uncomfortable. Olivia, I think you're overthinking this. Not every person is trying to avoid intimacy. Sometimes people just need time to trust someone enough to let their guard down. She smiled again, but this time it was different. It was like she was trying to get me to understand something that I wasn't seeing. Sure, but think about it this way. If you're not allowing yourself to be completely open, if you're not letting someone in, then what are you really building? A relationship based on false assumptions and guarded emotions. I wasn't sure where she was going with this, but I felt like the conversation was starting to take a turn for the weird. So what exactly are you saying? That I should just let go of all my boundaries and be totally vulnerable with anyone I meet? She stopped walking, looking at me with a strange intensity. Not anyone. Just the right person. But first, you need to understand that you're the one holding yourself back. You're the one preventing yourself from experiencing real intimacy. It's not about the other person, it's about you. At that moment, I realized that this wasn't just a casual conversation about relationships. Olivia wasn't just interested in getting to know me. She was trying to psychoanalyze me. She was trying to convince me that my boundaries, my sense of self-protection, were the real problem in my relationships. And the more she talked, the more I felt like I was being pressured to agree with her worldview, whether I wanted to or not. I tried to laugh it off. I don't know, I think you're reading too much into this. Everyone's different. Some people are just more comfortable with being vulnerable than others. Olivia didn't laugh. She just stared at me, like she was waiting for me to realize something. But you're still not getting it. You're still holding onto those walls. That's why you're not fully connected with anyone. You're too busy protecting yourself from getting hurt. I felt like I needed to get out of this conversation before I started feeling trapped. I think I'm gonna head back to the car, I said, starting to turn around. This hike's been fun, but I don't think we're on the same page about a lot of things. Olivia didn't follow me immediately. She just stood there watching me. You know, I thought we could connect on a deeper level, she said quietly, almost sadly. But I guess you're not ready to face the truth about yourself yet. I didn't say anything else. I just kept walking back to the car, my mind spinning. I wasn't sure what just happened, but I felt like I had been manipulated into thinking I needed to change my entire approach to relationships. Olivia wasn't just trying to date me, she was trying to fix me, to mold me into what she thought a healthy, emotionally open person should be. And that wasn't something I was interested in. When I got in the car, I took a deep breath and tried to shake off the weirdness of the whole situation. I wasn't mad at Olivia. She probably meant well, but I wasn't going to let her push her ideas of vulnerability onto me. I needed someone who could accept me as I was, not someone who tried to make me fit into their vision of what a relationship should be. That night, I blocked Olivia on Tinder. I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I didn't owe her an explanation. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and I wasn't going to let someone manipulate me into thinking I needed to change just to meet their standards. It was a reminder that not every date is what it seems. People have different ways of thinking, and sometimes their intentions aren't as innocent as they seem. Always trust your gut, and if something doesn't feel right, walk away. I'd never thought I'd meet someone on Tinder who would make me question everything I thought I knew about dating. But then I matched with Lucas. At first, it seemed like any other match. His profile was decent, with a couple of photos showing him doing normal things like traveling and hanging out with friends. He had a bit of a cheeky grin in his pictures, and his bio mentioned he was into self-improvement and personal growth. Those things weren't red flags. In fact, they were kind of the opposite. I'm someone who values growth and improvement, so I figured it'd be a great conversation starter. We hit it off in the first few days of texting. He seemed thoughtful and, honestly, pretty easy to talk to. We both enjoyed the same kind of music, had a similar sense of humor, and even talked about our favorite books. It was nothing groundbreaking, but the conversation felt natural. Eventually, after a week or so, we decided to meet up. We agreed to meet for drinks at a bar nearby. I showed up early as usual and grabbed the table by the window. I wanted to make sure I looked relaxed, but also looked like I wasn't super nervous. As soon as I saw Lucas walk in, and I felt a little more at ease. He was taller than I expected, dressed casually but well. He looked like someone who took care of themselves, and I could tell he was confident. He had that energy about him, calm but self-assured. He waved when he saw me, and I stood up to greet him. We shook hands, and the conversation immediately picked up. We both ordered drinks, and things were flowing well. There were a few awkward pauses, but they didn't last long. He was engaging, asking questions, and seemed genuinely interested in me. But as the night went on, I began to feel something shift in the conversation. "So," Lucas said, leaning back in his chair, looking at me with a slightly intense expression, "what do you think is holding you back in life?" I blinked at him, unsure of how to respond. "What do you mean, like in general?" "Yeah, he said, a little too casually. "Like, what's stopping you from being the best version of yourself? We all have something we're working through, right? Maybe it's emotional stuff, or maybe it's mental barriers." I felt this odd wave of discomfort. "I don't know," I said, laughing a little. "I guess I just try to work on stuff as it comes up. I'm always working to improve, but I don't think I'm stuck or anything." Lucas nodded slowly, like he was processing my words. "That's the thing, though. We all have these little things that keep us from reaching our full potential. But we don't always realize it, do we? I mean, you'd be surprised how many people think they're doing fine, but they're actually holding themselves back because they're not addressing their real issues." I wasn't sure what he was getting at, but I tried to steer the conversation back. "I think everyone has their struggles, right? But you can't fix everything all at once. I just focus on what I can control." He smiled at me, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was almost like he was amused. "That's true. But sometimes we don't realize what we can't control until someone else points it out to us." I felt a bit of an uneasy vibe, but I didn't want to be rude. "What do you mean? Are you talking about self-improvement or—" "I'm talking about everything," he said, sitting up straighter. "A lot of people aren't aware of how much they need to change. And honestly, I think you've got some stuff to work on. I can tell already." I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. "Wait, are you saying I need to change something?" He smiled, but there was something about it that felt more like a challenge than encouragement. "Yeah, I mean, we all have things to work through. I've been studying people for a while now, and it's easy to see what people are missing. Most people don't know it, but they're not living up to their full potential." I was starting to feel uncomfortable now. "Okay, but I don't think I need to be fixed. I'm just living my life. Lucas leaned in, his tone now more serious, almost condescending. "No, but that's the thing. You think you're fine, but you're not. I can see it. You're not as self-aware as you think you are. You need someone to show you what you're missing." I sat there, dumbfounded. "You've been studying people. What are you? Some kind of expert?" He laughed softly, as if he just said something obvious. "Not an expert, but I know how to spot potential. I know how to recognize what people are missing in their lives. It's easy for me to see where you could improve. I've worked with a lot of people on self-improvement, and honestly, I think you could benefit from some guidance." I felt a mix of confusion and frustration. "Guidance? From you?" "Exactly," he said, nodding. "I know it might sound strange, but it's part of what I do. I help people reach their full potential, and you're not there yet. But I can help you get there. All you need to do is be willing to listen and trust me." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I wasn't here to be analyzed or to have someone tell me I wasn't good enough. "Look, Lucas, I don't think I need anyone to fix me. I've got a good handle on my life, and I'm happy with where I'm at." He didn't seem to get the hint, but that's just it. People don't realize they need help until they face it head on. "Trust me, I'd helped a lot of people, people who thought they were fine, just like you. But deep down, they knew they weren't, and I can help you too. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. It was like I was talking to someone who didn't even see me as a person. They saw me as a project to improve. I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I'm not asking for help. I'm not looking for someone to come in and tell me what I need to fix. Lucas looked at me like I had just missed the point completely. That's the problem, though. You don't even realize you need help, but I can help you see what you're missing. It's not a bad thing. It's just that you don't have the right perspective yet. But if you let me guide you, you'll be much better off. I had enough. I think this is where we stop, I said, standing up. I'm not interested in being part of your fixing project. I'm fine as I am, and if you can't see that, then I don't think this is going to work. Lucas didn't seem upset. He just nodded, like he expected this. It's fine. I knew you'd resist at first, but you'll see. Everyone needs help, whether they know it or not. I walked away, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. I had just been on a date with someone who didn't see me as a potential partner, but as a project to improve. He was more interested in changing me than actually getting to know me for who I was. I didn't need anyone to fix me, and I wasn't about to spend another second listening to someone talk down to me like that. Later that night, I blocked him on Tinder. I didn't owe him an explanation. I wasn't looking for a life coach in a relationship. I wanted someone who accepted me for who I was, not someone who thought they could make me better. It was a reminder. You don't need anyone to tell you what's wrong with you, and you definitely don't need someone who sees you as a project to fix. If someone can't appreciate you as you are, they're not worth your time. I wasn't expecting my Tinder date with Victoria to go sideways the way it did. When we first matched, she seemed like any other woman I might meet on the app. Attractive, easy to talk to, and her profile made her seem pretty down to earth. Her photos showed her at art galleries, traveling to different cities, and living a seemingly normal life. Her bio said she loved a good laugh and was looking for someone who was passionate about life. Honestly, we had a lot in common, and I thought this could be a nice, casual date. Nothing serious, just a meetup to see if there was a vibe. We decided to meet at a trendy little bar in the city, one of those places with exposed brick walls, dim lighting, and a laid-back atmosphere. The kind of place where you can actually hear each other talk without feeling like you're screaming over loud music. I showed up a bit early, grabbed a table in the back, and ordered a drink to calm my nerves. I checked my phone and saw that Victoria was about to arrive. I figured it would be a typical first date, some small talk, maybe a few awkward moments, but nothing out of the ordinary. When she walked in, I immediately noticed how great she looked. Tall, with a classy yet casual look, wearing a sleek black dress that fit her perfectly. She smiled when she saw me, and I felt a little more at ease. We exchanged greetings and sat down. The conversation started off fine. She asked about my job, I asked about hers, and we talked about our favorite places to travel. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was comfortable. But then the vibe started to change. We were about 20 minutes into the conversation when Victoria brought up something that completely threw me off. "So, what do you do for fun?" "I mean, when you're not working, of course," she asked, her eyes narrowing as she looked at me. I shrugged, trying to keep things light. "I like to hang out with friends, go hiking, check out new restaurants, normal stuff." She nodded slowly like she was processing everything I said, but then she hit me with a question that made me uncomfortable. "Yeah, but what do you really do for fun? I mean, you're not like struggling financially, are you?" I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to brush it off. "I mean, like, struggling with money," she clarified, looking at me with that expectant expression. "Like, are you the kind of guy who's still figuring things out, or do you have your life together?" I felt a little uneasy, but I played it cool. "I'm fine. I make a decent living. I'm not rolling in cash or anything, but I'm good." Victoria smiled a little, but it wasn't a warm smile. It felt more like she was sizing me up. "That's good to hear," she said. "I mean, I'm not looking for someone who can't keep up with me. I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but before I could ask, she kept talking. "I'm just really into dating guys who can provide. I need someone who can give me the lifestyle I want. I can't be with someone who doesn't have a plan. You can understand that, right?" My stomach sank. What was going on here? I was starting to get the feeling that I wasn't just talking to someone looking for a connection. I was talking to someone with an agenda. What exactly are you looking for in a partner? I asked, trying to steer the conversation back to something more neutral. Well, she said, leaning in slightly, I need someone who can support me. You know, someone who has their life together financially. I'm not trying to be with someone who's still figuring out their career. I need someone who's already successful, someone who can treat me the way I deserve to be treated. I wasn't sure if I was hearing her right. Wait, are you saying you want someone who's like wealthy? Victoria smiled again, but this time it was more like she was getting to the point. I mean, yes, I want someone who can give me the lifestyle I want. I'm talking about nice dinners, trips, gifts. You know, the finer things in life. A man should be able to provide that for his woman. And honestly, I'm not interested in someone who can't keep up with that. My jaw almost dropped. Was she seriously saying this on a first date? I had been expecting a casual dinner, maybe some light conversation, and instead, I was being evaluated based on my financial potential. It was like she wasn't interested in who I was at all. She was only interested in what I could give her. So, what exactly is your idea of keeping up? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Well, she said, looking me over as if she was appraising me, I want someone who can take me out to fancy restaurants, buy me designer things, take me on trips, stuff like that. I mean, I'm not gonna settle for a guy who's still figuring out how to make ends meet. I want someone who can spoil me. I stared at her for a moment, trying to process what she was saying. Are you serious? Victoria nodded, her expression becoming more earnest. Of course I'm serious. I'm not trying to waste my time. I've dated guys who couldn't offer that, and it just doesn't work for me. I'm looking for someone who can treat me the way I deserve. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't a date. This was a business transaction. She was looking for someone to provide for her, not someone to connect with on a deeper level. It wasn't about love or mutual respect. It was about finding someone who could afford her lifestyle. I sat back in my chair, trying to stay composed. Look, I'm not interested in being someone's sugar daddy, I said, my voice firm. Victoria's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. I'm not asking for that, she said, but I could tell she wasn't taking me seriously. I just need someone who can give me the lifestyle I want. I deserve that. I shook my head, feeling more frustrated by the second. I'm sorry, but I'm not the right person for you. I don't think we're on the same page. Victoria seemed unfazed. Well, that's your choice, she said, shrugging. You're going to find out that I'm not the only one who thinks this way. There are a lot of women who are looking for a man who can provide for them. It's just how things work. I didn't respond. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and made my way to the door. I wasn't going to sit there and listen to her tell me how I wasn't good enough because I didn't fit her financial requirements. I had thought this date was going to be about getting to know each other, but instead, it felt like I was being judged based on my bank account. As I walked out of the bar, I couldn't shake the feeling of being used. I wasn't interested in dating someone who saw me as an investment, not as a partner. Victoria wasn't looking for love. She was looking for a paycheck, and I wasn't about to be anyone's meal ticket. Later that night, I blocked her on Tinder. I didn't owe her an explanation. I wasn't going to get caught up in some gold digger's game. It was a reminder for me, never let anyone treat you like you're just a source of money. If they don't see you for who you are and only care about what you can provide, they're not worth your time. I had been talking to Jessica on Tinder for a little over a week when we decided to meet up. I was genuinely excited. She seemed to be everything I was looking for. Her profile was filled with pictures of her at art exhibitions, traveling around Europe, and hanging out with her friends. Her bio mentioned that she was passionate about helping others with personal growth and becoming a better version of themselves. It all sounded positive, and she came across as genuinely kind. She also mentioned that she was into psychology and understanding human behavior, which was intriguing to me since I've always been interested in that kind of thing too. When we set up the date, she suggested we meet at a local coffee shop. Nothing fancy, just a chill spot where we could grab a drink and talk. I was all for it. The first few messages had been lighthearted, and the conversation had been flowing well. I was ready to see if the connection would be just as easy in person. I showed up at the coffee shop a little early and found a seat by the window. I wanted to be prepared and calm for the date. A few minutes later, Jessica walked in. She was even more beautiful in person, with bright eyes and a smile that was warm and inviting. She waved at me as she approached, and we greeted each other with a friendly hug. It felt natural, and I immediately felt comfortable around her. We ordered our drinks and started chatting. At first, it was the usual small talk, where we were from, what we did for work, our hobbies. But the more we talked, the more I started to notice something odd. Jessica seemed way too interested in what I was saying. It wasn't that she was being rude or overbearing. It was just that she was asking questions that went beyond the typical getting to know you stuff. So, tell me, she said, almost interrupting my story about a recent trip I'd taken. How do you feel about personal development? I raised an eyebrow, curious about where this was going. I think it's important, I said, not really sure what angle she was going for. I think growing as a person, learning new things, and evolving is part of life. She leaned in slightly, her eyes sharp as she nodded. Exactly. But it's not just about growing for the sake of growth. It's about intentional development. Shaping yourself into the best version of who you can be. And it starts with understanding who you really are. How much do you know about yourself? I felt a little thrown off. I like to think I know myself well enough. We all have areas to improve, but I'm comfortable with who I am. She smiled as if she was hearing something she expected. Sure. But the truth is most people don't really know themselves. They're just kind of going through life without fully understanding their strengths, weaknesses, and what's holding them back. That's why people get stuck in unhealthy patterns. I didn't know what to say at first. So, you think I'm stuck? She didn't miss a beat. Well, everyone has things they need to work on. It's not about being broken, but there are always ways to be better. You have to be willing to look at yourself honestly and confront the parts of you that need growth. Most people don't do that. They just go through the motions. I wasn't sure what to think. I'd never been on a date where someone was analyzing me so quickly. I had expected a fun time, but it felt like Jessica was more interested in trying to fix me than just getting to know me. Okay, I get that, I said, trying to keep the conversation light. But I'm not sure I need anyone telling me how to be better. I think I've got a pretty good handle on things. Jessica's smile didn't waver, but her eyes became more intense. I'm not telling you how to be better. I'm just saying that there's always room for improvement. Everyone can benefit from some guidance. That's why I do what I do. At that, I was even more confused. What do you mean, do what you do? She sat back, seemingly pleased with herself. Well, I'm a dating coach, actually. I help people identify their patterns, work through their issues, and become more self-aware. A lot of the time, people don't even realize what they're doing wrong. That's where I come in. I stared at her, unsure if I had heard that right. Wait, you're a dating coach? She nodded, and I could see that she was almost proud of the fact. Yeah, I specialize in helping people figure out why their relationships aren't working. It's all about knowing yourself and understanding what kind of partner you need to be, as well as what kind of partner you want. My head was spinning. So, wait a second. You're saying that you're a coach for people's dating life? Exactly, she said, her voice full of confidence. It's all about self-awareness, really. You need to understand your own emotional triggers, how you react in relationships, and what your goals are. Without that kind of clarity, people just keep repeating the same mistakes. I help people break those cycles. I was starting to feel really uncomfortable. Okay, but this is our first date. Why are you analyzing me already? She shrugged, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. It's not about analyzing you. It's about helping you understand yourself better. I can see right now that you have some things you could work on, but it's nothing major. We all have room for growth. My stomach sank. I wasn't here for a therapy session or a self-help workshop. I was here to have a good time and get to know someone. And now it felt like I was being judged and critiqued by someone who wasn't even interested in actually getting to know me. She was more focused on improving me. Listen, I appreciate what you're doing. I'm not sure I'm looking for a dating coach, I said, trying to steer the conversation away from this weird direction. I'm just here to meet someone. She didn't seem fazed. I get it. Most people don't realize they need help until they've been stuck in the same patterns for years. But that's okay. That's why people like me exist. You don't have to go through life guessing. You can have clarity. I was getting frustrated now. I don't think I need help. I'm happy with where I'm at, and I'm not interested in signing up for your coaching services. She didn't seem upset. She just smiled, almost like she'd expected this reaction. That's fine. Not everyone is ready for personal growth. Some people just want to stay comfortable. But if you change your mind, I'm always here to help. I stood up, feeling the need to get out of there. I don't think this is going to work out, I said, trying to be polite but firm. I'm not looking for someone to coach me. I want someone who can accept me for who I am, not try to change me. Jessica looked unfazed. That's your choice. But I'll tell you, the people who don't want to change are the ones who are always stuck. Just think about it. I didn't respond. I just grabbed my jacket, left a couple of bills on the table, and walked out of the cafe. As I stepped into the cool evening air, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift off me. I wasn't angry with Jessica. I just realized she wasn't the person I was looking for. I didn't want to be with someone who was more focused on fixing me than actually appreciating me for who I was. Later that night, I blocked her on Tinder. I didn't owe her anything. I didn't need a coach for my love life. I needed someone who was looking for a real connection, not a project. When I first matched with Brian on Tinder, I honestly didn't expect much. We'd exchanged a few messages, and everything seemed normal. He had the usual pictures, casual selfies, a couple of group photos with friends, and the classic travel shots. His bio mentioned he loved hiking, trying new restaurants, and exploring new places. It was the same kind of profile I'd seen 100 times. The kind that didn't stand out too much, but still gave a good enough impression to make you want to learn more. We started talking and quickly realized we had some things in common. We both liked hiking, loved food, and shared an appreciation for traveling. After a few days of texting, we decided to meet up. He suggested dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant near the city center. Nothing too fancy, just a nice, low-key place to get to know each other. I was game. I arrived a little early, as I always do. I like to settle in before a date, get a feel for the place, and just take my time. When Brian showed up, I immediately noticed how much taller he was than me, and he was dressed nicely, casual but polished. He had a confident, easygoing smile and walked over with that relaxed energy that's always a little charming on a first date. "Hey, nice to finally meet you," he said, giving me a warm handshake and a smile that felt genuine. "Same to you," I said. We both sat down at the table and ordered our drinks. The conversation started off fine, typical first date stuff. How our weeks had been, what we were up to, what kind of food we liked. He was easy to talk to, and it felt like we could get along just fine. But then, about halfway through the meal, he asked me a question that changed the whole tone of the night. "So, what's your deal with relationships?" He asked, his voice a little more serious now. I blinked, not expecting that. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to gauge what he was getting at. "Well, I mean, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something serious, or are you just dating around?" He asked, his tone casual, but with a hint of curiosity that made me feel a little exposed. I was a little taken aback by the directness of the question. "I'm just looking to meet someone and see where it goes," I replied. "I'm open to a serious relationship if the right person comes along, but I'm not looking to rush into anything." Brian nodded, but there was something about the way he was looking at me that made me feel like he wasn't satisfied with that answer. "That's the thing, though," he said. "Most people on here are just dating casually. They don't really know what they want, and they just kind of float around. I'm not into that. I'm looking for someone who knows exactly what they want and is ready for a real commitment." I wasn't sure where this was going, but I could already feel a shift in the conversation. "I get that," I said, trying to stay relaxed. "But I think it's important to take things slowly, get to know someone before deciding if you're ready for something serious." He leaned in a little, his expression becoming more intense. "Sure, but here's the thing. You can't just see where things go. You have to be upfront about what you're looking for. I'm not here to waste time. I want someone who's ready to build something long-term. And honestly, I don't think you're ready for that." My stomach dropped a little. I wasn't sure how to respond. It wasn't that I wasn't serious about meeting someone, but the way he was framing it made me feel like I was being judged for not jumping into a commitment right away. "I think that's a bit much for a first date," I said, trying to ease the tension. "I mean, we don't even know each other yet. It's kind of a big ask to expect someone to decide if they're ready for a serious relationship after one dinner." Brian didn't seem to take my response well. "That's the problem with people today," he said, almost exasperated. "Everyone is so scared of commitment. They don't want to invest in something real. They just want to keep things casual and avoid actually building something meaningful." I felt like the whole vibe of the date was shifting. I wasn't sure if he was trying to push me into a relationship or if he was just trying to prove something to himself. Either way, I wasn't comfortable with it. "I'm not scared of commitment," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But I think relationships take time to develop, and rushing into something because someone thinks they're ready is a mistake." Brian looked at me, his expression hardening a little. No, it's not a mistake. The problem is that most people don't know what they want, and they waste their time with people who don't fit. You have to be willing to choose to commit. If you're not willing to choose, then you're just wasting time. I sat there, trying to process what he was saying. I wasn't sure if I was frustrated or just confused at this point. It didn't feel like we were having a regular date anymore. It felt more like he was laying down rules, telling me how things should go, and expecting me to just go along with it. And frankly, I didn't like the way it made me feel. So, you're saying that if someone doesn't immediately show they're serious enough for you, they're out? I asked, trying to get clarity. Exactly, he said. You have to know exactly what you want and act on it. If you're not ready to go all in, then what's the point? I won't have time to waste. I felt the frustration bubbling up inside me. I wasn't here to be told what I should want or how I should approach relationships. I wasn't a project for him to solve, and I wasn't about to pretend I was ready to dive into something just because someone else thought I should. Brian, I said, standing up, I don't think this is going to work out. I'm looking for someone who's willing to take the time to get to know each other and see where it goes, not someone who's already got a set list of rules for what they expect. Brian didn't even seem upset. He just nodded like he was expecting me to say that. I get it, he said, standing up as well. I guess you're not ready for what I'm offering. I didn't respond. I just grabbed my coat and walked out. It wasn't that Brian wasn't a good person, but he wasn't the right person for me. I didn't need someone who was going to pressure me into a timeline or make me feel like I had to be ready for something serious immediately. I wanted a connection to develop naturally, not be forced into a box because someone else had set their expectations for me. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a sense of relief. It wasn't just the fact that the date was over. It was the fact that I had walked away from someone who wasn't respecting my pace. Later that night, I deleted his number and unmatched him on Tinder. It wasn't about him being wrong for wanting a serious relationship, but it was about me not being ready for someone who had such rigid ideas about how things should progress. It was a good reminder that it's okay to walk away from something that doesn't feel right. Relationships should be about mutual respect, not expectations being imposed on you from the start. When I matched with Victoria on Tinder, I didn't think much of it. Her profile was typical. Pictures of her with friends at parties, some travel photos, and a couple of shots in front of beautiful landscapes. Her bio was simple, mentioning that she loved hiking, cooking, and watching classic movies. It seemed like we might have some things in common, so I figured it was worth giving it a shot. We started talking, and our conversation quickly turned into regular text exchanges. She was sweet, easygoing, and it felt like we were getting along. After a few days of chatting, we agreed to meet up at a nice, casual restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, just a low-pressure setting to see if we clicked in person. I showed up early as usual, grabbed a drink, and waited for her to arrive. A few minutes later, Victoria walked in. She looked stunning, dressed in a simple yet chic outfit, with a smile that lit up the room. She waved when she saw me, and I stood up to greet her. We exchanged pleasantries and took our seats. The date started off pretty well. We talked about our favorite movies, the places we had traveled to, and the usual first date topics. It felt comfortable, and for a moment I thought this could be something that developed into something real. But as the night went on, I started noticing something strange. She kept asking about my job, how much I made, and what my financial goals were. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, some people are just curious about those things. But as she kept asking, I started to feel uneasy. So, she said, taking a sip of her drink, what do you do for work? I mean, how did you get to where you are now? I explained my job and what I did for a living, and then she followed up with a few more questions about my career path. I thought it was just normal conversation, but I was starting to sense that she wasn't asking just out of curiosity. You seem like you got your life together, she said, giving me a small smile. But I bet you got some serious financial goals, right? I was a little taken aback by how quickly the conversation had shifted. Well, yeah, I have some savings and I've got some plans for the future, but I'm not really focused on that right now. I just take it day by day, you know? Victoria nodded, but her expression was a little too calculating. Yeah, I get that. But don't you think you should be focused more on building your wealth? I mean, you're still young. You could do so much more if you really set your mind to it. I wasn't sure where she was going with this. I mean, yeah, I try to be smart about money. I save where I can, and I invest in some things here and there. Victoria smiled again, But this time, there was a sharper edge to it. That's good. I think it's important to know what your financial future looks like. I wouldn't want to end up with someone who isn't thinking about that stuff. I didn't quite understand what she meant. What do you mean? She leaned in slightly, her eyes locking onto mine. Well, I wouldn't be interested in someone who isn't working toward the secure future. You know, someone who doesn't have financial goals or isn't thinking about building wealth. I felt my stomach tighten. I wasn't sure where this was going, but it didn't feel like a casual date anymore. It felt like an interrogation. So you're saying you're only interested in someone who has financial stability? Victoria shrugged, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Not just stability. I need someone who is ambitious, someone who can provide for themselves and for me. I don't want to be with someone who's still figuring it out. I was stunned. Wait, are you saying you'd only date someone based on their financial situation? She didn't seem bothered by my question at all. Well, I think it's important. I mean, I'm looking for a partner who has their life together. It's not just about having a good job. It's about where you're going. I need someone who has a plan, someone who's going to be able to support the kind of lifestyle I want. I didn't know what to say. This was the first date, and I wasn't prepared for this kind of conversation. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not looking to be judged based on how much money I make. I think relationships should be about more than that. Victoria didn't seem to take that well. She sat back, but her expression remained calm. I get that, but the reality is that money matters. I want someone who can support me, someone who is financially secure and can give me the lifestyle I deserve. I was starting to feel like I wasn't in the same conversation anymore. This wasn't about connection or getting to know each other. It was about proving something. I wasn't interested in proving my worth based on how much I made or how much potential she thought I had. I don't think I'm looking for the same thing, I said, trying to be as polite as possible. I'm not here to be someone's financial solution. Victoria didn't miss a beat. It's not about being a solution, it's about compatibility. You want someone who can match your ambition, and I want someone who can offer more than just basic stability. If you don't have that, then I don't see the point. At this point, I knew this date wasn't going anywhere. I was starting to get the feeling that Victoria wasn't interested in me at all. She was only interested in what I could bring to the table financially, and I wasn't about to let myself be reduced to that. I think this isn't going to work out, I said, standing up and grabbing my jacket. I'm not comfortable with this. Victoria looked up at me, her face almost unreadable. I understand, she said, almost dismissively. I think I just need someone who's more serious about their financial future, someone who can give me what I want. I didn't respond. I just walked out of the restaurant, my mind spinning. I couldn't believe how quickly things had turned. What had started as a simple dinner had become a discussion about my finances, and whether or not I could provide a certain lifestyle for her. It wasn't what I signed up for, and it wasn't what I wanted in a relationship. Later that night, I deleted her number and unmatched her on Tinder. It wasn't about her being wrong for wanting someone financially stable. It was about how she had placed so much emphasis on money, as if it was the only thing that mattered. I wasn't looking for someone who saw me as an investment or a financial partner. I was looking for someone who valued me for who I am, not just how much I could offer them. It was a reminder that not everyone is looking for genuine connection. Some people are just looking for someone to meet their specific criteria. And when you realize that, you need to walk away and keep searching for someone who actually sees you for more than just what you can give them. I was nervous as I waited for Kate at the bar. I had been talking to her on Tinder for a few weeks, and our conversation had been pretty easygoing. She seemed sweet, funny, and interesting. Her profile had pictures of her with friends, a couple of cute travel photos, and some shots of her enjoying outdoor activities. It seemed that we had some similar interests, so I was looking forward to meeting her in person. When she walked in, I instantly recognized her. She had a bright smile and a confident, easygoing vibe. She was dressed casually but stylishly, and there was something about her that made me feel immediately at ease. We exchanged greetings, grabbed a drink, and sat down to start our first real conversation. The first 30 minutes or so went great. We talked about our jobs, our hobbies, and our families. We shared a few funny stories, and I felt like we were getting along pretty well. But then things started to take a turn. Kate started telling me a bit more about her past relationships. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's normal for people to talk about their exes when getting to know someone, right? She told me that her last relationship had ended about 6 months ago. She seemed a little bitter about it, but I didn't think it was anything unusual. What started to catch my attention, though, was how much she kept bringing up her ex. It wasn't just the occasional mention. It was like she was constantly comparing me to him. He used to take me to all these fancy places, she said, twirling her drink in her hand. We'd go to these expensive restaurants every weekend, and he'd buy me these beautiful gifts. It was amazing, really. I smiled awkwardly, not sure what to say. That sounds nice, I said, trying to keep the conversation going. Yeah, she continued, but it wasn't enough, you know. He was always so busy with work, and he didn't give me the attention I needed. I ended up finding someone else who could fulfill me in ways he couldn't. But I mean, he was still a great guy. Just not perfect, you know. I raised an eyebrow, feeling like the conversation was getting a little strange. I'm not sure I completely follow. So you're saying you were seeing someone else while you were with him? She nodded, not even flinching. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I cheated on him or anything. We had an open arrangement, but he didn't really know that I was seeing someone else on the side. It was just easier that way. I was taken aback. Wait, so you were in a relationship with him, but also seeing someone else behind his back? Kate didn't seem fazed by my reaction. Well, yeah, but it wasn't like I was sneaking around. He was so consumed with his career that it wasn't a big deal. I was just trying to get my needs met. And honestly, it was kind of fun. I got the best of both worlds. I wasn't sure how to process this. I mean, I'd heard of open relationships before, but this seemed different. It felt like she was justifying her actions, making it sound like no big deal. But the more she talked about it, the more I started to get the sense that Kate didn't really have a strong sense of loyalty or respect for her past relationships. She was just looking out for herself, and she didn't care who she hurt in the process. So, what's the deal now? I asked, feeling a little uncomfortable. Are you seeing someone else now, or are you just looking for something new? Kate smiled, her eyes twinkling. Well, here's the thing, she said, leaning forward in her chair. I'm not really looking for anything too serious right now. I just want to have fun, you know. And if I find someone who can keep up with me and give me everything I want, well, then maybe we can talk about something more serious. But I'm not interested in being exclusive right away. I wasn't sure if I liked the sound of that. It felt like she wasn't really open to the idea of a real relationship. She was just looking for someone to fill a void. I'm not sure I'm really into the whole casual thing, I said, trying to be honest. I mean, I'd rather be with someone who's genuinely interested in building something together. Kate didn't seem fazed by my response. Oh, I get that. I just think relationships are about finding the right balance, you know. If someone can give me what I need, attention, affection, and excitement, then why wouldn't I want to keep things open? It's not about cheating or being dishonest. It's about being free to explore and have fun. I felt uneasy. I wasn't looking for a fling or something where we both did whatever we wanted with no regard for each other's feelings. I was looking for something that could actually develop into something real. But Kate wasn't interested in that. She was more interested in testing the waters, seeing how much she could get away with, and not really being fully committed to anyone. I tried to steer the conversation back on track. So, if you were in a relationship, would you still want to keep things open, or are you just in the phase where you don't want to settle down? Well, Kate said, giving me a silly smile, I mean, I could be open to something serious if the right person came along. But I'm not going to settle for someone who can't give me what I need. I want someone who's willing to spoil me, give me attention, and make sure I feel valued. I stared at her, unsure of what to make of her words. So, what does spoil you mean to you? Like gifts and fancy dinners? Yeah, that's part of it, she said, shrugging casually. But it's also about being made to feel special, you know? Someone who can keep me excited, make me feel like I'm the only one that matters to them. I'm not interested in someone who can't give me that. At that point, I started to realize that Kate wasn't interested in me as a person. She was looking for someone to fulfill her desires, her needs, without putting in any real effort or emotional investment. She wasn't looking for a partner. She was looking for someone to give her the life she wanted, and she didn't seem to care who she had to use to get there. I had enough. I wasn't going to sit there and listen to someone tell me that their idea of a relationship was based on taking what they could and not giving anything back. I think I'm going to head out, I said, standing up. This just doesn't feel like what I'm looking for. Kate didn't try to stop me. She just smiled, as if she understood. I get it. You're probably just not ready for the kind of relationship I want. I didn't respond. I grabbed my jacket, left the table, and walked out of the restaurant. I wasn't mad at Kate, but I was disappointed. It had become clear that she wasn't looking for a genuine connection. She was just looking for someone who could give her what she wanted, and it wasn't about to be a part of that. Later that night, I blocked her on Tinder. I wasn't interested in being part of someone's game. I wanted a real relationship, not a situation where I was just a placeholder or a way to pass the time. I deserved someone who was willing to invest in me as much as I would in them. It was a wake-up call for me. Not everyone is looking for the same things, and some people are just looking to take advantage of others. If someone's not valuing you for who you are, then they're not worth your time. I met Kate on Tinder, and at first, everything seemed perfect. Her profile was filled with photos of her at various museums, traveling to different countries, and hanging out with her friends at what looked like upscale events. She came off as intelligent and cultured, and in our conversations, she talked a lot about psychology and human behavior. It was the kind of stuff that intrigued me. I'd always been interested in the way people think, so when Kate brought it up, I was instantly hooked. We connected over those shared interests, and after a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up for drinks. We chose a low-key bar in the city, a place with soft lighting, comfortable seating, and a great selection of craft beers. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect for a first date where you wanted to talk without yelling over loud music. I showed up a bit early, grabbed the seat, and waited for her to arrive. When Kate walked in, I recognized her immediately. She was even more stunning in person than in her pictures. She had natural beauty to her, with a confident stride that made her stand out in any room. We exchanged hellos and took our seats. Everything felt easy at first, and for the first 20 minutes or so, we had the kind of typical first date conversation, getting to know each other, talking about work, travel, hobbies, and so on. But soon, things took a turn that I wasn't expecting. "So," she said, leaning forward with a curious expression, "tell me about your childhood." I blinked, a little thrown off by the question. "Oh, okay," I said, not sure what angle she was going for. I had a pretty normal childhood. Grew up in a small town, played sports, had some good friends. Nothing too crazy. Kate nodded, but she wasn't satisfied. Normal is such a vague term. What do you mean by normal? What were the dynamics in your family? How would you describe your relationship with your parents? I wasn't used to being asked such personal questions right off the bat, especially on a first date. I mean, my parents were pretty supportive, I guess. We weren't perfect, but we got along well. I think everyone has their issues growing up, right? She smiled, but there was something strange about it. "I see. You don't really know what your issues are, do you?" I chuckled nervously, unsure if she was joking. I guess not. I mean, I'm not really sure where you're going with this." She didn't break her serious gaze. "That's okay. Most people don't realize what they're hiding or what's affecting them. But the truth is, your childhood shapes everything. Every action, every choice you make as an adult is based on how you were raised. The things you think you're in control of. They're often just subconscious patterns you learned from your family dynamics." I blinked, feeling uncomfortable. "Are you saying I'm messed up because of how I was raised?" She didn't hesitate. "I wouldn't call it messed up, but yeah, you definitely have unresolved issues, just like most people do. It's just a matter of becoming aware of them." I wasn't sure if I should laugh or just leave. It was the first date, and this wasn't what I signed up for. "I don't think I have any major issues. I mean, everyone has baggage, right?" Kate leaned in closer. "No, I mean real issues. People who don't confront their past end up repeating the same mistakes over and over. You're probably doing things in your relationships right now that you don't even realize come from your childhood. And the worst part is, you probably think they're just normal behaviors." I didn't know how to respond to that. She was coming off way too intense for my liking. "I don't know about all that. I think I got a pretty good grasp on my life." Kate didn't seem fazed by my response. "Of course you think that. Most people do. But let's be real here. If you're not constantly self-reflecting and actively improving yourself, you're stagnating. Most people never stop to actually think about their patterns. They just go through the motions." At this point, I started to feel like I was being psychoanalyzed. This wasn't a first date. It felt more like a therapy session. "I don't think I need to be constantly improving myself," I said, trying to steer the conversation away from what was becoming an uncomfortable topic. "I mean, sure, I work on things that come up, but I'm not exactly on a mission to change everything about myself. She didn't let up, but that's the problem. You're not willing to take a deep look at yourself. People who aren't willing to dig into their past and confront their issues are the ones who end up stuck. You think you're fine, but there are layers to you that you haven't even uncovered yet. I could feel the anxiety creeping in. I wasn't here for a personal growth seminar. I just wanted to have a good time and see if there was any chemistry. I'm not sure I'm looking for this kind of deep dive right now, I said, trying to keep things light. Kate didn't seem to get the hint. I'm just saying you should really consider the patterns you've adopted. Your past is shaping who you are, whether you like it or not. And the only way to break free from unhealthy patterns is to be honest with yourself. I was getting frustrated now. Look, I don't think I need to break free from anything. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing just fine. She raised an eyebrow, almost looking amused. Most people who say they're fine are the ones who are the most in denial. It's clear to me that you have some unresolved issues with your family dynamic that are affecting your relationships. I couldn't take it anymore. I was sitting across from someone who wasn't interested in actually getting to know me as a person. She wasn't looking for a connection. She was looking for someone she could analyze and fix. I stood up, feeling a wave of frustration wash over me. I think I'm going to head out, I said, grabbing my jacket. Kate looked unfazed. That's fine. You're probably not ready to face the truth about yourself anyway. But you'll get there. Everyone has to confront their issues eventually. I didn't respond. I just walked out, feeling both angry and relieved. This wasn't a date. It was an interrogation. I wasn't interested in being someone's personal project. I wanted to meet someone who would accept me for who I am, not someone who was going to try to psychoanalyze me right off the bat. As I stepped into the night air, I realized how important it is to trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, don't force it. Kate wasn't the right person for me, and I wasn't going to let someone turn a casual date into an emotional deep dive. Later, I blocked her on Tinder. I wasn't about to waste any more time on someone who wasn't interested in building a real connection. If someone can't accept you for who you are, then they're not worth your time. I met Nathan on Tinder, and from the moment we started talking, it seemed like he was the perfect guy. His profile had everything I liked. He was into hiking, loved dogs, and had a good sense of humor. We had a lot of similar interests, and our conversations felt easy. After a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up for a casual dinner at a restaurant that was halfway between both of us. I thought it would be the perfect low-pressure first date. Little did I know, this dinner would turn into one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. I arrived at the restaurant first, like I usually do. I like to settle in and get a feel for the place before the date starts. I was nervous, but excited to meet him in person. I had high hopes after all the great conversations we'd had. Nathan walked in about 10 minutes later, looking exactly like his pictures. He had this easy confidence about him, and I could tell right away he had a magnetic presence. We greeted each other, sat down, and ordered our drinks. The first 15 minutes of the dinner went great. We talked about our work, our families, and our favorite places to travel. Nathan seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, and the conversation was flowing smoothly. I was starting to relax, thinking this could be the start of something good. But then, about halfway through the meal, Nathan's attitude changed. The conversation started to feel a little more tense, a little more forced. He started asking me questions that I wasn't sure how to answer. "So, tell me about your last relationship," he asked, casually sipping his wine. I wasn't sure if it was too soon to dive into that topic, but I figured I could be honest. Well, it was a couple of years ago. It ended because we just grew apart. We wanted different things, and we couldn't make it work. Nathan nodded, but then something strange happened. He raised an eyebrow and asked, "What do you mean by different things? Do you think you were just too difficult for him to deal with?" I wasn't sure how to respond. No, not really. We just weren't compatible. We wanted different lifestyles, different goals. It wasn't anything personal. But Nathan didn't let it go. He said, looking thoughtful. "So you don't think you had any part in making it hard on him? Maybe you were just too demanding or too emotional." I felt taken aback by the sudden turn in the conversation. "I don't think that's true. It just didn't work out." He leaned back in his chair, smiling slightly, but there was something unsettling about the way he was looking at me. "Okay, but you have to admit, sometimes people just can't handle someone like you. Maybe you're just too much for some people. I could feel the tension building. What do you mean by that? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. You know, Nathan said, looking directly at me, sometimes people just don't know how to handle someone who's emotionally intense. Maybe that's why it didn't work out with your ex. Maybe you pushed him away without even realizing it. I felt my stomach drop. This was the conversation I expected to have. I wasn't even sure if he was trying to be helpful, or if he was just digging into me for no reason. I don't think that's the issue, I said, my voice shaky now. We just weren't right for each other. It's really that simple. Nathan's smile widened. Sure, but you have to admit that maybe you're not as easy to get along with as you think. Maybe you have some things to work on before you get into another relationship. I mean, look at the way you're reacting now. It's clear you have some unresolved issues. I felt a wave of anger rise up in me. I don't appreciate you saying that, I said, trying to stay calm. You don't know me. You don't know what happened in my past relationships, so I don't think it's fair for you to make assumptions. Nathan didn't seem bothered by my response. In fact, he seemed amused. You're defensive. It's okay, though. A lot of people are. You're just trying to protect yourself. But deep down, you know I'm right. You know we have some things to work on. I stared at him, speechless. I had only known this guy for a few hours, and yet he was acting like he had me all figured out. He was digging into my past and making me feel like I was the problem. I had no idea where this was coming from, and I was starting to feel like I was losing control of the conversation. Why are you saying all of this? I asked, my voice trembling now. We're on a date. We're supposed to be getting to know each other, not talking about my past mistakes. Nathan shrugged like it was no big deal. I'm just being honest. Sometimes people don't realize the role they play in their own problems. You're just one of those people who can't see it yet. At that point, I realized I needed to end this. This wasn't a date. It felt like an emotional attack. I had tried to be open, but Nathan wasn't interested in getting to know me. He was more interested in breaking me down, making me feel small, and convincing me that I had some deep, unresolved issues that were all my fault. I'm done, I said, standing up. This is not the kind of date I signed up for. I don't need someone who's going to tell me what's wrong with me. Nathan didn't seem fazed. He just looked at me, unfazed by my reaction. I get it. You're just not ready to hear the truth. But you will be eventually. I didn't respond. I grabbed my coat and left the restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest. I was so shaken up by what had just happened. I didn't even know if I was angry or just deeply confused. I had gone from being excited to meet someone new to feeling like I was being manipulated and gaslighted. As I walked down the street, I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. I realized that I had just been on a date with someone who wasn't trying to connect with me at all. He wasn't interested in getting to know me or making a real connection. Instead, he was focused on tearing me down, making me question myself, and playing some kind of psychological game. It wasn't just annoying, it was downright disrespectful. Later that night, I blocked Nathan on Tinder. I wasn't going to let someone like that back into my life. I didn't need to be gaslighted or made to feel like I wasn't good enough. I deserved better than that. It was a good reminder for me. Sometimes people don't have your best interests at heart. Some people are just looking to manipulate you, to make you doubt yourself and question your worth. And when you realize that, it's time to walk away.